Events begin on the planet Songlun, 2025 BC. Taikon dodges the attacks of a girl swinging her sword. Dodging Taikon asked her the reason why she attacked him. It turns out that the attacker was his sister. Looking at him with a slight grin, the sister ran out to him, throwing her sword. Taikon was embarrassed because she suddenly pressed herself against him. With an innocent face, she began to remember the old days, how 5,000 years ago he was the emperor on Earth. At the same time, she was the mistress of the spirit kingdom, how he and Taikon cultivated, passed obstacles together, and also traveled across planets. She stated that she was no longer going to be just a sister, complaining about his rejection, as well as his cruelty. She invited him to die together. Taikon froze. It was noticeable how surprised he was by her words. The impact, the collision with the ground, covered everything in dust. The scale of the impact was visible. The seriously wounded Taikon realized that his sister wanted to kill him because she couldn't get him. The wounded Taikon continued on his way, deciding to retire for a while to recuperate. Originally a desert planet, Ceylon acquired indigenous inhabitants, a kind of earthly creatures. This happened because the immortal emperor Xia Gui was recovering here, and his aura flowed out. This was the beginning of life. Calling themselves descendants of the gods, they worshipped Xia Gui Xuan, considering him the father god. After the resettlement of the Blue Star people 300 years ago, cities were formed and humanity grew, and the indigenous peoples began to be called demons. 2025 BC, Xia Gui stood in a stupor. He was shocked by the changes of this planet. Xia Gui could not understand how these changes happened. Closing his eyes, Xia Gui began to understand that being filled with karma along with him, this world appeared from his immortal power. Entering the store, he was greeted by a girl with a polite smile, slightly surprised by his appearance. Xia Gui could not pay for goods due to his 500-year-old outdated banknotes. The girl who watched this asked to return his bills, saying that she would pay for him. Approaching him from behind, she advised him not to be arrogant, calling him a little demon. While Xia Gui was thinking about her words, she turned around and quickly left after saying goodbye. Xia Gui realized that times have changed. The money that people use has also changed. And without an ID, it is impossible to take a step. A fox girl and a flying demon chasing her were chasing across the rooftops. Xia Gui felt his aura in them. The flying demon was approaching, and the fox girl continued to run. It turns out that the demon demanded from the fox girl a serum that was injected into the animal. It turned out that the demon had already put it into practice. Looking at them, Xia Gui realized that the aura was not natural, and that the demon was not like this by nature. Declaring that no one would know about this secret if she died, he seriously wounded her with his claws. Having flown to the side, the girl hit her head hard on a pole. In his thoughts, Xia Gui said that based on the division by cultivation level, Yin Xiaoru is considered a cultivator in the initial stage of Qixin, which is considered strong among people. The demon, at the cost of shortening his life, raised his strength to approximately the middle of the Qin Xin stage with the help of medicine. The demon furiously approached the girl, who was pointing a weapon at him. By firing the weapon, she reminded him of the changing times. A shot pierced, but the demon turned away from it without any effort. The girl was numb with surprise, and at that time the demon approached her and grabbed her. Xia Gui, who was watching from the side, decided to help her, since she had some of his karma in her. Xia Gui's strong attack sent the demon flying to the side. The girl, having come to her senses, began to take an interest in her protector. Having finished with the demon, Xia Gui inquired if she needed help. The girl remembered that she had recently met him in a store. Considering Xia Gui to be a weakling, she decided to knock him out after he escorted her to the hotel. To do this, she decided to pretend to be a nice drunk girl and asked to accompany her. Xia Gui immediately saw through her tricks and was surprised at her arrogance. To himself, he decided that it would be better not to mess with foxes. A girl with a seductive and sweet smile approached him, holding his hand, and offered to do whatever he wanted with her as soon as they reached the hotel. With the same forcedly cute face, she now decided to feign a headache. Xia Gui moved away and calmly continued on his way. The girl froze in surprise at his actions. Having lost her support, the girl fell and began to be indignant. She screamed at him, asking what was wrong with him and why her seductions weren't working on him. Still indifferent, Xia Gui said that not all men are good at this and closed the topic. Moving away from the conversation, he noticed that a group of people was approaching them. Shining a lantern, a guy in a suit was loudly interested in what was happening. The girl pressed herself close to Sia Gui. A slight fear of what was happening was visible in her eyes. Sia Gui stood motionless and was confused. The guy addressed her by name and just began to take an interest in their outfits, and she quickly realized and turned the situation in her direction. She began blaming them for a job poorly done, expressing her dissatisfaction with the fact that she and her boyfriend were attacked by a demon after the party they left, claiming that the demon robbed them, even stealing their car. Sia Gui was surprised that the patrolman knew her and speculated to himself. One of the patrolmen began to talk about how such situations were becoming more frequent, and that after lunch a heavenly sign appeared. This led to the outlines of Tsanglan floating in the clouds. The patrolman also shared his worries about the southern demon clans. The girl, feigning understanding of the situation, asked to prepare for them for the return trip. The patrolman agreed and soon provided a car for them. In the car, Sia Gui was thinking that the introduction of Kang Lan's dragon form was due to his appearance. At the same time, the girl, without taking her eyes off, noticed his beauty. It turns out that after all these years, Sia Gui still has not recovered from his injuries. At the same time, the fox sitting next to him began to feel his hair, which led him to be distracted from his thoughts. Sia Gui, embarrassed and indignant, inquired about the reason for her actions, and the fox still looked at him, admiring his reaction. And then she completely climbed onto his lap, which led to even greater indignation and stupor in Sia Gui. The patrolman driving the car was surprised that the imperturbable and indifferent female president of the city of Sangyu would lose her head if she brought beautiful men. Sia Gui moved away from her in embarrassment. The fox noted to herself that her actions were caused by the fact that she wanted to find out what race he was. She embarrassedly thought that her 20-year-old image of an arrogant girl was interrupted because of him. Having arrived at their destination, Sia Gui and the fox got out of the car. While Sia Gui was looking at the hotel, the fox covered his slightly open mouth with her hand and told him not to reveal his identity because of the enmity of gods and people. She also did not forget to remind him that he had no money or documents, but Sia Gui remained silent in response. Continuing on her way, the fox said that she would help him with all this as a token of gratitude for his service. Having entered the threshold of a luxurious hotel, the fox called him to follow her. As soon as they entered the room, the subordinates lined up, bowed, and greeted her. Sia Gui followed her, and the butler who was watching was not happy about it. With his piercing evil gaze, the butler mistook Sia Gui for his mistress's lover. Even though the butler seemed reserved and adamant, Sia Gui, who was watching, understood that he was angry and scared because he could perceive the thoughts directed at him. The fox threw him a bracelet. Sia Gui, thinking quickly, caught it. The fox explained that the bracelet was tied to her unlimited bank account. She also assured him that there would be no problems with money. With ID, it will be a little difficult, but luckily for our hero, she has superior acquaintances. As soon as Sia Gui put on the bracelet, a digital panel with different characteristics was displayed in front of him. She asked him to write a dossier, starting from his childhood to adulthood. She then went to the other side of the room and said that she would decide how she could adapt the truth about herself. Looking after her, Sia Gui expressed that probably no one would believe his story. In private, he decided that she wanted to reveal hidden details about him. Looking at him, the fox began to doubt his words. Sarcastically, she began to ask him questions, jokingly classifying him among the immortal gods. Quite embarrassed by her posture, Sia Gui said that she was close in guessing. Shouting to him that he began his story from childhood, she threw him a pillow. The stunned Sia Gui grabbed it during a spot. Sia Gui began to tell that having been born as a prince in the Jia dynasty, he inherited the throne after the death of his father. The fox listened to his story with a calm face. Not believing his words, she put her hand on his shoulders to encourage him. Then she said that she would come up with a story for him herself. As she approached, she was completely confident in her words and said that she had already guessed about his story. She began to vehemently talk about her guesses, claiming that he was a child left behind after the evacuation of the gods from the north. 24 years ago after the war, Sia Gui froze in amazement at her statements. After her statements, she vehemently began to check the veracity of her words with the digital panel. Sia Gui calmly watched this, declaring that his words were true. Having finished entering the information, the fox tiredly announced that now the matter was left to his friend, who would enter it into the Daxia system. Thanking her for her help, Sia Gui promised her that he would help her with something in return. Containing her embarrassment, she refused his help, citing the fact that he was still a beginner. In fact, our hero was the immortal emperor Sia Gui. The fox mockingly gave him a new name, saying that from now on he would be called Cindy Ziagui, and now Cindy was not very happy about this. Leaving him bewildered, she quickly left. With the help of a spell, Cindy changed his hairstyle and, having received clothes from the butler, began to ask her about the war between people and gods. She began her story with the fact that 200 years ago, the human fleet of the Blue Star wandered onto the planet Songlun. Until people seized power, they lived in peace. But now the indigenous people rule only over part of the country. Cindy began to be indignant. I don't understand how scientific skills could defeat divine forces. The fox just exhaled and said that times have changed. At the same time, a guy still unknown to us was sitting at the monitor. While watching, he talked to himself about the fact that the head of Yin Ping had brought a man. The next day came, the entire area was guarded by agents. The butler knocked on Yin's door, notifying her that her great aunt had arrived. Yin woke up and saw herself in the arms of a peacefully sleeping Cindy. Yin was all red with embarrassment and didn't know what to do. Also embarrassed, Yin pushed Cindy out of bed, screamed and threw a pillow at him, wondering about the reason for his actions. Even outside the hotel, her exclamations could be heard. Cindy silently and calmly buttoned his shirt, while she hysterically picked through her things, scattering them everywhere. Angry that no man was in her bed, Cindy adamantly avoided her things, and she also continued to criticize him. Having gathered, she decisively stated that she would lose face if people found out that he was here, so he could not go outside. While Yin calmly went about her business, Cindy stubbornly noticed that she had already lost her face. At the same time, her great-aunt, tired of waiting, had already begun to ask her butler about her exit. Bowing his head, the butler informed her that his mistress would arrive soon. Yin's voice came from behind, confusing her grandmother. Yin came down the stairs with her charming smile, telling her grandmother that she would have taken her herself if she had warned her. The woman, biting her lips with envy, watched Yin's beauty, being angry that she was becoming more and more beautiful. Stating that she did not want to interfere with Yin's work, she dodged the question, then made the remark that things were not going well at the Sengyu branch, and she was still at home. Yin confidently responded to her provocations by stating that she herself would explain the company's results, but only to the board of directors. Before she could finish speaking, she noticed something that made her freeze at that very moment. She recognized her grandmother's guard as the demon who haunted her when she stole the formula from the Zhou family. Also in a daze, she assumed that grandma was now related to the Zhou family, which was to say that she was up to no good. Having interrupted the flow of her thoughts, the woman again continued to be indignant at the fact that the medicine she had given only worked for 3 minutes, to which Yin offered, refusing to give it to civilians, to which the woman again indignantly replied that no one would buy it or drink it before his wife caught him cheating. After Yin said that a market niche had been found, the woman clenched her teeth in anger. Grabbing her head, the woman exhaled and began to say that Yin needs a man next to her because she only has beauty and is not suitable for business. She wanted to mention something about unification with the Zhou family, but Yin immediately interrupted her and asked whether she was talking about marriage. Indignant, Yin began to tell her that an arranged marriage was not appropriate for the 26th century. The grandmother, with a satisfied face, reminded Yin that she did not react like that to yesterday's man. Jumping up from her seat, Yin embarrassedly began to justify herself by saying that she was already 24, not forgetting to remind her grandmother that she throws parties every day. The grandmother was greatly embarrassed by her words, calling them nonsense. Yin continued her words by saying that her grandmother began to recruit capable men. From her words, even the guys behind the grandmother kept serious faces. The grandmother got out of it by saying that they were her bodyguards. With a straight face, Yin stated that then the man from yesterday was also her bodyguard. Barely holding her face, the grandmother stated that since he was her bodyguard, she wanted him to fight her bodyguard to see what he was capable of. Yin was immediately worried that Cindy might be in danger because she considered him a weak little demon, and with a frightened face she said that he was not there. Suddenly Cindy's plaintive voice rang out, asking who woke him up. But Yin was confused by the fact that he called her dear. Jumping up from her seat, the embittered grandmother asked who dared to insult her. A handsome man stood in front of them and looked at them. As Cindy descended, both women watched him in shock. Both women ate, keeping serious faces to themselves, and noticed his beauty. The grandmother completely accidentally asked if he was really her bodyguard, while making a slip of the tongue. She called him handsome instead of a bodyguard. Yin, barely containing her embarrassment, confronted her about why he couldn't be a bodyguard if he was handsome. The woman questioned his competence doubtfully. Yin shyly gave a positive answer. After Yin answered, she gave the command to her bodyguard to act. Hearing the order she gave, the bodyguard instantly rushed from his place to Cindy. Confident Cindy just waved his fingers and conjured something. After Cindy's actions, the bodyguard's appearance changed dramatically, causing him to be surprised. Everyone saw that he was a biomodified person. Everyone was confused. The embittered bodyguard began to question Cindy about how he achieved his transformation. Gathering mana with his mouth, he decided to kill Cindy. Yin immediately ran out to Cindy, wanting to protect him. The bodyguard released his mana, and Yin rushed to save Cindy, covering her with her body. In turn, Cindy created a protective dome that protected him and Cindy from the demon's attack. Determinedly, Cindy used her magic again. All his magic was directed at the demon, blinding everyone with its light. The light from the magic gradually faded, and Yin was able to look at what was happening by opening her eyes. In front of Cindy lay an incinerated demon. Cindy stood behind Yin, thinking that she had obscured him. While no one was looking, Cindy quickly dissipated her magic. Yin gave the order to hand him over to the ministry. Confused, the woman began to object to this, saying that it would complicate everything. She argued that the best solution was to return him to the family and allow them to sort everything out, since many already want to harm the Yin family. Yin refused the offer, citing the fact that the family would now be busy with the wedding they had arranged for her. The woman, pleasing Yin, began to say that that groom was not so good and she would find another for her. Gritting her teeth, the woman thought about the fact that research on biomodified people is prohibited by the army. It turned out that the military is the biggest clients of the Yin family. Having come to her senses, the woman declared that medicine was more important than the wedding, and that if Yin did not fulfill the oath, she would face a military tribunal. Thoughtfully, Yin explained to herself that if the development had been so easy, then she would not have gone to the Seven Joes to steal. Suddenly, Cindy came out from behind, surprising Yin with his action. He immediately declared that the medicine was nothing, to which Yin was again indignant, to which Cindy again pretended to cover for her. It was just that the woman wanted to find fault with the fact that he called the medicine a trifle. Something made everyone turn around and pay attention to it. Everyone turned away from the conversation and directed their gaze at this something. Commander Yang Wu stood on the threshold, surrounded by her flames. Cindy immediately realized that she was strong and was surprised that there could be such a person on Song Lun. The woman ran out to greet her, and Commander Yang walked past without even looking at her. With a restrained look, Yang asked Cindy if he could develop potions for the ministry. But when Yin wanted to stop her, Cindy sharply answered positively. With a stern look, Yang clarified whether he was putting his life on the line. Cindy answered in the affirmative. Yin again wanted to stop him, but Yang said that everything had been decided. Yin continued saying that Cindy was talking nonsense and that she should not pay attention to him, but they were adamant and clasped their hands in agreement. In the same part of the room, the grandmother also did not like what was happening. She intervened and said that medicine was their family matter. For her words, she received a sharp slap in the face from Commander Yang. From the blow, she flew away and fell, hitting her head against the wall. Angry, Yang explained that the Yin family pretended to be important people, although they were only suppliers, and the medicine was the ministry's business. The outraged woman began to shout at Yang, saying that she was only a half-breed, that she was a mixture of a human and a divine being. Yang interrupted the woman's indignation with her magic. The woman was very frightened by the attack that was heading towards her. The burning woman continued to beg for mercy. At that same moment, the woman began to formally address Yang again, saying that she was wrong. Having given the order to leave that goblin, Yang ordered the others to leave the room, threatening that disobedience is punishable by death. The bodyguards tried to leave quickly, taking the burned body of the woman. Cindy sadly thought to himself that he came down for a fight, but this woman stole all his scenes. Yang began to make claims about the human race who were fighting only for survival on this planet. Yin suddenly hugged Yang from behind, jokingly asking her to cool down, to which Yang began to playfully touch Yin's cheeks and began her tirade about the fact that there is no reagent, that she has found herself a lover and also demands help with ID. Further in the garden, Yin and Yang continued their conversation about the Zhou family, speculating about their involvement in the biomodified research. Also, during the conversation, it turned out that the Zhou family has a military background, and because of this, it will be difficult to deal with them. Suddenly, Yang asked Yin for a favor, to which she readily agreed. Yang explained that Yin Xiaoru would need to seduce Peng Cheng, to which Yin screamed that she wished Yang to go to hell for such requests. Further in the laboratory, the employee, worried, asked Yin if she was confident in her actions. They continued to doubt, and Yin explained that this was alchemy. The kolva hovered in front of them. Its temperature had already reached 666 degrees. The employees clarified about her method, saying that she uses a method that no one uses. Yin explained this by saying that this is the latest alchemical formula. In private, Yin herself did not believe in this method, because it was Cindy who advised her to use it. Cindy talked about how to eliminate the side effects of their drugs. He explained that this can be achieved by grinding the flour and grass from Lake Qingtan, heating them for 2 hours. The employees tore her from her thoughts because the liquid inside the test tube began to rotate. Yin looked at this and was very surprised. The liquid began to transform into a pill, and their method began to work. This confused all the employees. They looked at what was happening in amazement. Having learned about this, the professor came to them. He immediately went to the panel, followed by Yin, and inquired about how this drug could be used. The professor clarified that judging by the data, this drug can counteract the side effects of tons of genetic reagents. With sunburned eyes, the professor asked whether the new academician had come up with this, which shocked Yin. She wondered who he was talking about. While in a garden in the suburbs, Cindy reflected on the fact that he was seriously injured in this area, and Yin, in turn, turned this place into a botanical garden. Suddenly, an animal flew out from behind and wanted to attack Cindy. The adamant Cindy struck him down with one blow. While the tiger cub looked at Cindy in fear, he noticed the tiger cub's intelligence. To himself, he realized that these were again the consequences of the aura that he had released. Turning around after he was called, he noticed Yin running towards him. Having caught her breath, she asked about the class of medicine he gave her, and Cindy in turn inquired about their performance. Deciding that it did not work, Cindy said that he would find a more powerful one, and that there were many ways to do this. Confused, Yin explained that this was not so. Just as she wanted to explain herself, the conversation was interrupted by a sudden notification. It was from General Yang. In the displayed panel, one could see chat messages. Many of them were directed at Commander Yang, due to the fact that she does not show the fox Yin because they are alone, and she is beautiful. From these messages, Cindy came to the conclusion that the people in the chat were horny idiots. After they got to the point, Yang informed Yin that the Zhou family had probably chosen this place for research, because here they could take possession of the location of the demonic relics. Yang also said that today is Zhou Pengchen's birthday. This is an excellent opportunity because the laboratory's defenses will be weakened. Yang explained that Yin only needed to detain them. After all, Yang wants to conduct an investigation herself together with her team, to which Yin gave her consent. After the conversation ended, Yin invited Cindy to a birthday dinner, which he readily agreed to. While Yin was talking about how she didn't want to give him anything, Cindy offered his help in the form of a gift from which he would never wake up. Yin happily smiled and agreed to his proposal. They came to the place of celebration, and Cindy asked if there would be any suspicions about him. Yin made it clear that it was normal for a woman of her status to come with a bodyguard. In her own thoughts, Yin was thinking how good Cindy looked in a suit. At the same time, they were already near the door. The butler near the door politely invited them to come inside. All eyes turned to Yin. Some called her too beautiful, others, envying her beauty, called her names, calling her flirty. Standing on the threshold was the stunning and confident Yin. While they were heading deeper into the hall, Peng Cheng and his bodyguard were heading towards them. Peng Cheng greeted her with a casual compliment. Thanking him, Yin handed him the gift she had prepared for him. Having opened the gift, Peng Cheng saw a magical weapon in front of him. Yin confirmed his words, adding that he could stop the blow of a ray pistol, and pointed the weapon at him. A shot was fired, and of course the weapon did its job perfectly, deflecting the blow with ease. People were amazed at such a gift because, due to the fact that the number of descendants of the gods is decreasing, artifacts are becoming more and more expensive due to their rarity. People's delight gave way to indignation. They began to say that Yin was spending her family's money unwisely. In turn, Peng Cheng was of the same opinion, considering Yin brainless and thinking that he still would not have trusted her despite such a valuable gift given for the purpose of goodwill. Commander Yang's team visited and found out that from this position they could get into the institute without being guarded. As soon as Yang gave the order, the team began to act. The people who could control the land began to open a passage for others. Once they had dug enough, the rest of the team came after them. Yang gave the order to break through the wall. After the order she gave, The team began to destroy the walls. After a joint effort, the team achieved the destruction of the wall. Entering the laboratory, they discovered that there was no one there. This event confused all team members, including Yang herself. The guys discovered that there was no useful information here, and it seemed that the Zhou family had cleaned everything up. Jan talked about how biological tests always leave a lot of traces and remains, and they cannot be hidden in any way. Based on her thoughts, Commander Yang realized that this place was just a cover. At the same time, the real entrance is located in a completely different place, more precisely underground in the villa of the Zhou family. At the same time, birthday dances continued at Zhou's estate. While Yin was eating her wife, she said that she wanted to sneak away to Yang, and that Cindy asked if she wanted to go there alone. Just as Yin wanted to answer, someone interrupted their conversation. It was Penchen who wanted to invite Yin to dance, to which Yin dismissed the fact that she had a partner and invited Cindy to dance. To which Peng Chun replied with ridicule that it is unlikely that the bodyguard knows how to dance, and this makes people laugh. While they were heading to the center of the hall, Yin, in turn, stated that even if he didn't know how, she would teach him to dance without any problems. Ying wanted to teach him by holding his hands and giving instructions on his actions. Cindy, taking the situation into her own hands, quickly picked her up and said that now he would teach her, which greatly embarrassed Yin. Yin embarrassedly decided to herself that Cindy learned to dance especially for her. Cindy explained that the amazingness of this dance is the work of the heavenly Tao. In her thoughts, Yin was amazed that he could tell a story without being distracted from the dance. The ladies watching them were amazed by Cindy's beauty, and they were very interested in where Yin found her bodyguard, to which the other ladies suggested that it was only Yin's precious keeper. Penchen watched them just as angrily. His hands were shaking with anger. Suddenly, one of his people told him that someone had invaded their secret passages. This interested Penchen, which prompted him to take action. At the same time, Yang understood that they were all getting closer and closer, because the energy fluctuations were intensifying. She told her team to get ready and keep their heads down. Finally, they managed to invade some room like a mine, but what was there shocked her entire team, including her. They saw a huge room above the ground where there were a lot of magical animals and magicians were hanging above them. The magicians contained these monsters in this room. They realized that this was the catalyst for the descendants of the gods, which led to the formation of these monsters. Jan, who observed all this horror, noticed how terrible people are who can do such a thing. While Yang was talking about this, someone approached from behind, saying that she didn't understand everything correctly. It was the girl with her red flame who made it clear that if this sea of blood was allowed to rise to the surface, even the people in the city would turn into monsters. She continued her narration, explaining her actions by saying that they were cleaning this place by activating the formation so that the animals could withstand harmful pneuma. To which, with the same condemning look, Jan made it clear that she was not reading this in a good way. The girl made it clear that this is not what they are striving for at all. They only need sacred blood after they cleanse this place. They also explained that they do not intend to harm anyone. The girl explained that this is how they cooperate with the Zhu family, noticing that she and Yang have the same pedigree. Therefore, the girl expressed that she did not want to fight with Yang, and if she agreed, they would leave after purification, which Ian, of course, didn't believe. Explaining their distrust by saying that they would clearly blame the gods, having expressed that it was troublesome to kill a famous general, the girl nevertheless began to act. The mages next to her supported her magic. With their combined efforts, they created a seal that emitted red smoke in the shape of a skull. The girl appeared before Yang in all her greatness. Yang, who was watching what was happening, called the girl's methods just toys. It turns out that Cindy was watching all this in her guise as Jia Gui. Using the magic of invisibility, he hid and waited for the start of the fight. Yang began an eruption attack with her tribe in the form of a huge hand. The girl watching this realized that it was worth taking action. She created flying swords next to her thanks to her seal. From her seal, many swords began to fly towards Yang. After Jia Gui saw the flying swords, he began to assume that these people were cultivating immortality. The swords were easily straightened by the Yang flames. They were just child's play for her. Surprised, Jia Gui noticed that if you decide to tumble with her, she will burn her hair anyway. At the same time, the battle was only gaining momentum. After a powerful attack from Yang, the girl realized that her powers were inferior to those of Yang. While Yang headed towards the girl for the next attack, the girl pulled her something red. Calling this magical thing a gift for Yang, the girl asked to accept it. While Yang was wondering what it was, the girl was already saying goodbye to her. Yang realized that as soon as she took a breath, this magical thing began to spew fire. The angry girl justified her actions by saying that they were still no match for the Special Forces commander. Because of this, they activated the seal. The sea began to move, and such an amount of blood began to accumulate in just one drop. The entire sea was formed in just one drop. This surprised Yang very much. She couldn't believe her eyes. The satisfied girl began to attract this drop to herself. They made it clear that they had been purifying this drop of blood for years using unsuspecting animals. Speaking about the fact that Yang wanted to give her body as a replacement, the girl placed her forehead so that the drop could be absorbed into her. After that, all the purified blood began to flow to her, and with all majesty she accepted this, saying that Yang would save them from many problems. The girl's servants praised her, saying that they were now one with the holy blood, that the great Tao would now be in her blood and thus force the descendants of the gods to bow before her. While the girl absorbed the blood, they shared their thoughts that her blood had changed, clearing her bone marrow, and since the blood of God the Father is in her, will she now become a mother? Xia Guai realized that it was his frozen blood that poured out when he was injured. Appearing in front of her, Xia Gui asked her about the reason for absorbing blood, and asked since she was now a mother what she would call him. Suddenly, the girl opened her eyes after hearing what she heard and saw him hovering in front of her. Immediately putting out her sword, she began to interrogate him, wondering who he was. And she stated that since he saw something that he should not have seen, now he must die. After her words, she let go of her sword. Suddenly her body no longer obeyed her control, and Xia Gui lowered her body to the ground, descending with her. The girl was petrified with surprise, calling him father. The girl was very surprised by the words she uttered and by the fact that she was under his control. The girl decided to find out who this powerful creature in front of her was. Looking at him, the girl assumed that he was the immortal spirit of God, but she still didn't understand the reason why she obeyed him with all her heart. Touching her forehead, Xia Gui said that he did not expect that her blood could have an impact on the appearance of another daughter, because it was troublesome for him. With the tip of his finger, Xia Gui left a slave mark on her, and made it clear that with the help of it he could find her wherever she ran. Bowing her head, she accepted this, declaring him her master. In her thoughts, she did not understand how this happened, and that now she could not call him father because she was a slave. Sitting down, Xia Gui began to ask about the girl's origins. It turned out that her name is Lin Moxui. She told her that she is a professional actress. Noting that Lin looked good, he told her not to be afraid and to behave well. The girl was embarrassed by his actions, and she decided that today she would lose the innocence that she had kept for 20 years. As he approached her even closer, the girl noticed his beauty and could not take her eyes off him. With his finger, he handed over a technique with which she can now return mutated monsters back to normal ones. He added that she should release them as atonement. Having finished transferring the equipment, he said goodbye and got ready to leave, adding that he would find it as soon as he needed it. The girl was extremely upset by his departure. After all, she did not expect that his request was this. Suddenly, in the mansion, Peng Chen began to approach Yin Xiaoru and announced that he wanted to do something important. Kneeling down, he asked for her hand, to which Yin quickly brushed it off and said that he was delusional. Saying that she should not refuse, Peng Chen advised her to first contact her sister. Peng Chen decided that Yang was already dead, judging by the explosion in the dungeon. Yin found that she could not communicate with Yang. Enraged, Yin began accusing Peng Chen of attempting to kill the commander. With all his arrogance, Peng Chen said that he should not be falsely accused. After all, he only wanted to remind her that Yang would no longer be able to protect her. Telling her that she should agree to his proposals, he left her heading deeper into the hall. Yin remained standing in her same place, not understanding what was happening. Standing in the center of the hall, Peng Chen announced to the people who came to his birthday that he had a new product that he would like to show them. While people were perplexed, Peng Chen explained that this is a magic mirror that can reflect the essence of all living things. He decided to clearly show how his mirror works and approached the exotic plant. After he placed a mirror over the plant, it turned into an ordinary golden chrysanthemum. Turning around, he turned to the people, asking if they thought that there were descendants of the gods here, and if they could be reflected in this mirror in their true form. People admired Peng Chen, and were glad that they could catch the descendants of the gods who had been fighting with them for a long time. They were certainly glad that they would be able to cut them into pieces if they were here. Yion, who was watching this performance, was embarrassed, thinking that he was threatening her because he found out that he was a fox. The mirror was directed at them, which made Yin turn around because the mirror was directed at Xia Gui. Pengchen decided that Xia Gui was a demon, and with the help of his disclosure, he could accuse Yin of hiding the descendants of the gods. Grinning, he decided that after this she would cry and beg him to protect her. But his plan failed because Xia Gui also continued to stand under the rays of the mirror in the guise of a man. Pengchen was stunned that his mirror did not work on him. Yin was also very surprised because she did not understand how Xia Gui was not reflected in the mirror and came to the conclusion that the mirror was fake. Xia Gui happily stated that the mirror did not work on him because he was a human. Xia Gui stated that he had an identical mirror and why not try to reflect it back. Just as Pengchen wanted to brush it off, Xia Gui immediately directed the mirror beam at him. After that, to everyone's shock, a turtle shell appeared behind Pengchen. Everyone was very surprised, and immediately there were exclamations that Pengchen was actually the spirit of a turtle. Looking in the mirror, Pengchen couldn't believe his eyes and didn't understand where the shell came from behind. People were dumbfounded that evil spirits had the courage to come here, and they gave an order for him to be captured and handed over to the police. As soon as people wanted to attack the frightened Pengchen, his people immediately came. The Zhou family's people gave orders to protect Pengchen. With himself, Pengchen understood that if they throw him the identity of a descendant of the gods, then it's all over. Out of fear of what was coming, he decided to run away so as not to be caught. Suddenly, Yin appeared in front of him, which scared the crap out of him. Pretending that he wants to slip away into the girl's presence, Yin pointed her weapon at him. With a charming face accompanied by a pew sound, she shot him with her weapon. Pengchen, realizing that things were bad, quickly substituted the artifact donated by the Yin family. He was calm because he was sure that this artifact could protect him. At first, the magical artifact repelled Yin's blow. From the blow of Yin, the artifact began to collapse. Pengchen watched this process without understanding. Suddenly, a rope began to form from the artifact and stretch towards Pengchen. While Pengchen was perplexed, the ropes began to wrap around his body. In the end, they engulfed his entire body, leaving no chance to move. Due to the limited movement, Pengchen collapsed, unable to stay on his feet. Yin began to approach, telling him that she stood by her word because she said that she knew how to block attacks and did so. Suddenly, the voice of Commander Yang rang out, and she gave orders to Song Yu's troop of tame demons. She gave an order for the detachment to restore order and take control of this place. Yin was encouraged by the arrival of her sister Yang. Running to her, she reached out to hug her. Starting to complain, Yang said that she was scared for her because Pengchen scared her. Holding her head close to her, Yang began to calm her down, assuring her that she was fine. After breaking the hug, Yin said that the shell is actually an illusion, and therefore she now doesn't know what to do with it. At the same time, the chained Pengchen angrily tried to break free. Intrigued, Yang explained that it doesn't matter whether the shell is real or not. Yang, who had started something, reminded him that he was trying to kill the commander. Suddenly, Yang's gaze involuntarily fell on Xia Gui, which couldn't help but amaze her. She noticed that he was very similar to the one who saved her in the dungeon. In a capricious tone, Yin asked Yang about the reason why she was staring at his Xia Gui, to which Yang quickly brushed it off while continuing to stare at him. Having come to her senses, Yang asked if Xia Gui had left somewhere not long ago, to which Yin thoughtfully replied that he was dancing with her, so he could not leave. Yang noted to herself that with such and such cultivation, it would not be difficult for him to divide souls, but she was not yet sure of her words. Looking at Xia Gui, she decided that she would test her guesses and therefore began to act. Already at the house, Yin asked Yang the reason why she did not go to interrogate Pengchen, but instead came to sleep with her. Coming out of the shower, Yang, straightening her hair, asked if she was glad to see her. Sitting in his room, Xia Gui read about how some company produces energy sources that do not pollute the planet. It turns out he read about a car they produced that was like a flying sword, and also had a unique design. While Xia Gui was busy reading, Yang came knocking on his door, asking him if he is busy. Xia Gui, without taking his eyes off the display, asked her the reason for her visit. Embarrassed, Yang noted to herself that she would not flaunt everything like a fox. Deciding that she still had to find out the veracity of her guesses, she approached Xia Gui to find out what he was doing. Realizing that even after that he was not paying attention to her, she decided to ask her directly about what she looked like. Xia Gui still did not glance in her direction and continued to look at the new technologies. Yang was quite taken aback by his behavior, and she didn't understand why he didn't pay attention to her, even though she came to him in this form. Yang was unshakable. She decided, no matter what, to touch him and understand everything. While Xiaogui was perplexed, she still decided to touch him. With a calm expression on his face, Xiaogui said that there is no reason to check because he is the one she is thinking about. Yang was embarrassed and at the same time surprised by his confession. She didn't understand why he admitted it so easily and wished that she had pretended to be a prostitute for this in vain. Suddenly, Yin entered the room with a flourish, wanting to offer Xiaogui some juice. She saw a very interesting picture in front of her, and Xiaogui and Yang did not want her to think of anything. Bad thoughts began to creep into Yin's head, but she quickly brushed them aside after coming to her senses. Yang, having decided to change the topic, inquired about Yin taking a shower so quickly. In her head, she was very worried and didn't know what to do. She was very ashamed in front of Yin. Realizing that the situation could not be corrected, she ran out and left the room. Putting the juice on the edge of the stand, Yin began to question Xiaogui. Sitting on the edge of the bed, she asked if Yang's hands were soft. The unsuspecting Xiaogui directly replied that they were quite soft. His words made Yin angry. Enraged, Yin began to talk indignantly about whether she should have given them a house so that they could spend a pleasant night. In her heart, Yin didn't understand why she was so angry because he was not her boyfriend. Xiaogui reminded her that she said that she would give money for the prescription. Embarrassed, Yin handed him the bracelet. Xiaogui refused the money, instead suggesting that she give him staff houses in a remote area that he had seen in the botanical garden. Surprised, Yin asked him if he really wanted to live in the botanical garden, to which Xiaogui replied that he really liked it there. Xiaogui continued his words, arguing that the move would be next door to her. Yin thought that he was having an affair with her sister, and this was the reason for his move. But she immediately came to her senses because he is a man who is not interested in girls. The next day, while they were having breakfast, Xiaogui looked at Yin without taking his eyes off. She asked if it was because of her beauty that he was looking at her, to which he replied that it was her business. Even if that was the case, Yin continued the conversation by starting the topic of his move. She said that since he was done pretending to be her boyfriend and the recipes were already ready, he could move now. To which Xiaogui replied that he considered her a defenseless woman who lived alone and offered to teach her the nature of immortals. Yin is encouraged by his proposal because she was very interested in these techniques. She was adamant about her desire to learn, and she expressed that she needed a teacher. Xiaogui said that she had good innate fox abilities. He didn't want her to waste them. But at the same time, he said that she was not suitable as his student. Yinan, without being taken aback, replied that she had not yet called him her teacher. Still, having agreed, Xiaogui asked her to come up to check her potential and then choose the right Tao for her. He conjured something and touched her with the tip of his finger. Holding her waist with one hand, he expressed that it was a pity to waste the fox's talent. Turning to Xiaogui, Yin decided to say that he could touch her by simply asking about it. She also said that she does not believe that he does not take students because she thinks that in the status of teacher and student he cannot do anything. For her words, Xiaogui lifted her into the air with just one swoop. She was very embarrassed, and he simply threw her onto the sofa. With just one click, Yin was surrounded by robots from her home on every side. She was perplexed because she had the control bullet. The unshakable Xiaogui continued to drink his coffee while talking about puppet technology. Sitting down on the sofa, he continued his story by saying that all animals and plants can protect her with just one call, adding to the fact that even a blade of grass can bind the enemy for its protection. Inspired, Yin expressed her desire to learn this technique. Suddenly, a click came from Yin. This was a warning from Xiaogui to train well. He explained that even if her spiritual power only affected one robot, it would already be a good result. He continued to talk about how it was rare for immortal cultivators to reach the Qian Yuan realm within 3,000 years. At the same time, people achieved the same thing in 100 through genetic evolution. However, he made it clear that cultivating the immortal Tao means that the spirit and body are limited, and the mind at the same time is infinite, which means that theoretically life will be endless. Xiaogui added that you can change the body shell if you don't like the human body. Having finished his story, he threw her a jade tablet. Yin was amazed that he pulled out this tablet so easily. After that, he helped her out with a ring to keep, having said that she can consider it a welcome gift. After Xiaogui gave her the ring, strange thoughts filled her head. Having imagined the picture of them together, she still decided that it was not worth moving forward so quickly. She quickly waved it away to rid her head of such thoughts. Arriving at the house assigned to him, Jiagui noticed that it was quite large. Thoughtfully, Jiagui decided that this was a pleasant place to live because it was surrounded by mountains and forest. Declaring that from now on this was his place of residence, he began to transform his home. The place immediately turned from an ordinary house into an old temple. Going inside, he called the fat tiger to him. While Jiagui was sitting and drinking his tea, the roar of a tiger was heard. Suddenly, from afar, the tiger began to rapidly approach Jiagui. Starting to stroke the tiger who was obediently sitting in front of him, he promised to give him energy to absorb if he guarded the main entrance. Jiagui made it clear that there is no need to be afraid of him, because his father is a god. In private, Jiagui was thinking about what to do with the fox. Jiagui clarified that she has a divine bloodline created for enlightenment, and if he starts giving her pills, she can turn into a nine-tailed fox in the future. After Jiagui found the treasure, he realized that if he used it, he could make pills. This will be able to increase their level even with the help of ordinary healing agents. Lin looked at what was happening without understanding, because she didn't know the reason why Jiagui called her. While Lin was quickly looking at what was happening in front of her, Jiagui appeared. He praised her for not going near the treasure because her repelling powers could have killed her. He threw a piece of paper to her with the names of materials for making pills and weapons, and asked her to mark what she couldn't find. Taking the list in her hands and examining it, she obediently agreed. Suddenly, Jiagui inquired about the cultivation level of the senior members of their sect and asked whether she possessed the highest technology. Lin explained that only their founder's cultivation is incomprehensible. Only he possesses top-level techniques. Jiagui said that there is no problem because he himself will show her the highest technique as soon as she becomes a sect master. Lin thanked him for this, but expressed her request. She asked to remove the slave seal as soon as she repaid her debt, explaining this by saying that being a sect master while being someone's slave is no better than not being a master at all. To which Jiagui, approaching, asked how she could bargain with him being a slave, to which Lin replied that if so, then she could only subjugate him. Confused, Lin clarified how she would contact him if she received the equipment. When leaving, Jiagui explained that if she says the word Xia Ji Qi Xuan 3 times, he will immediately know about it. She was dumbfounded by what he said because only God is capable of this. She did not understand who he really was. Suddenly, Jiagui's bracelet vibrated with a bell, and by pressing it, a panel opened in front of him. It was Yin. She said what happened. What kind of trouble? Yin said that the Zhou family sued them for the reagents they provided. They stated that the reagents were credit results of their research. Hearing Yin's voice, Lin thought that Jiagui was the boyfriend she was supporting, and stated that Jiagui's image had now deteriorated for her. Jiagui was extremely outraged by their action because the recipe was completely provided by the Immortal Cultivator Association. Jiagui explained that this happened because someone from the Zhou family took advantage of his connections after analyzing the formula, to which an enraged Yin said that her family blames her and demands her return. Jiagui reassured her by promising that he would return to the capital with her tomorrow to provide her with support. Yin was pleased with this arrangement. The next day, Yin and Jiagui arrived in the capital. Yin put the car back together in one fell swoop. As they walked, Yin expressed her worries about whether her divine identity would be revealed due to the number of people in the capital, to which Jiagui assured her that nothing would happen and gave her a magical disguise weapon with which no one could reveal her. She fussily accepted this magical weapon. Yin thought embarrassedly to herself and did not understand why he continued to give her gifts without understanding their meaning for the girl. At the entrance to the house, there were robots that carried out personal identification, which they successfully passed. They headed into the house. At the entrance, they were greeted by a huge estate. Having overcome the main gate, they headed into the house itself, through the large garden. On the threshold of the house, a warrior awaited them, accompanied by Captain Wu Yang. He stated that Yin could enter, but that outsiders were prohibited from entering. Yin stated that this is her boyfriend and no one can stop him from bringing him to her. While Yin was speaking, a voice came from inside, ordering the squad to remove Jiagui. Hearing the order, Captain Wu began to prepare to attack Jiagui with a grin. The smug captain walked towards Xia in an attempt to attack, but Jiagui dodged his attack, parrying his blow with just his finger. From the impulse, Captain Wu flew away, unable to resist. The squad was shocked that their commander, a third-level fighter, was sent flying with just one finger. The people inside the house were surprised and dissatisfied with this circumstance of affairs. Yin was very pleased with Xiaogui because she could feel safe next to him, and so they entered the house. They were met at home by an old man who was indignant at the fact that they were running around the capital only because they had little strength. Yin was outraged by his words and asked if he was talking about himself. This greatly angered the old man. He just wanted to object to her, but he was stopped. The head interrupted them, explaining that Great Xia has always been a place where strength is above all, and there is nothing wrong with teaching a weakling a lesson. Angry, Yin began to be indignant, not understanding why he did not fight back against other families who bullied them, placing the blame on the relative instead, to which the head asked Yin to calm down and explained that they were in an emergency situation. The head began to talk about how a few days ago there was a sign of Long in the sky. He continued the story by saying that the struggle between the descendants of the gods and people has stopped, because they are now preparing for the coming of God the Father. Continuing, he explained that as soon as God the Father arrives, war between the races will be inevitable. From his words, Yin realized that the head does not want people to think that Yin is connected with the descendants of the gods, and therefore wants her to admit that she stole the potion from the Zhou family. Confirming the truth of her words, the head said that it would be more profitable for them if the Zhou family was in the spotlight. The head also announced that, in compensation for such injustice, he would appoint her as vice president of their game production company, to which the old man expressed his dissatisfaction, explaining that this was their main source of income. The head angrily began to scold him because he was mocking his descendants, believing that he had such a high reputation. The head understood that because Xiaogui looked strong, the head believed that he was the descendants of gods above the late stage of Tengyun. The head decided to tie him to their family because in connection with further changes, he will become a treasure for their family. While flipping through the channels, Xiaogui noticed that the Yin family is not so stupid. Yin also made it clear that she did not know about the elder's intentions and that she wanted to dig a hole for the Zhou family. Yin continued by saying that she considered her family to be stupid and could have broken up with them a long time ago, avoiding a lot of trouble. After all, since childhood, she has been a false member of the family, because even her parents do not know who she is. To which Xiaogui only briefly answered without turning away from the TV. Yin was angry with him because she was pouring out her soul and he didn't care. Measuredly, she began to confront him about his actions, to which Xiaogui adamantly devoured his chips. There was a series on TV about the Taikang period of the Xiaogui dynasty. For Xiaogui, the series was very tempting because he was interested in who would play him. To which Yin replied that this is an adaptation of the novel that she is finishing reading. Xiaogui wondered that, although the series is not bad, Taikang is not yet visible, to which Yin responded that they were too beautiful to find a suitable actor to play them. Yin added to her words that in the original novels, the hero and heroine are considered immortal in the 9 heavens, so it would be impossible to find similar actors. Shyly, Yin expressed that Xiaogui would look like a real person if he played. Xiaogui picked up her words and was inspired by the idea of playing his own character. Yin didn't even have time to blink when suddenly Xiaogui disappeared and left her. Yin's scream was heard from the house, and how she called Xiaogui that cracker over there for leaving her. Suddenly, Xiaogui found himself next to Lin. As Xiaogui sank to the ground, Lin was very surprised by his visit. Xiaogui reassured her by expressing his interest in the series in which she was starring, and not in her. He asked her how to get the main role, and clarified that they needed an actor. Lin said that she has already bought part of the rights to this series and can now approve him for this role without any problems. Surprised that everything happened so quickly, Xiaogui asked to prepare everything because he wanted to play Xia Taikang. Lin said that she would do whatever her master asked her to do. Opening the display through the bracelet, Lin asked Xiaogui to become an actor under her. With herself, Lin imagined that he would become a person like her slave if he signed this contract. The next day, both of our heroes appeared on the set, but Xiaogui was in his personal guise. Lin gave an order to her assistant that it was worth tweaking Taikon's script to try out a new actor. A moment later, the director appeared, declaring that everything was ready. He began to retell the actions from the script, saying that the king and his ministers would hunt monsters, and at the same time the tiger would furiously rush at Taikon. He explained these actions by saying that it would highlight Lin's charm. The dumbfounded heroes asked not to change the plot blindly, not understanding what the writers created. Xiaogui expressed his dissatisfaction because Tai Can pierced the tiger with an arrow 18 times. Lin, who joined in, noticed that the original also said so. And how could the tiger attack the king if he was hunting? She scolded the director, saying that adaptation does not mean you can change the plot as you please. Further on the set, Xiaogui did not understand why there was no tiger and grass, to which the screenwriter made it clear that he only needed to fall and they would do the rest later. Pointing to the grass on the street, Xiaogui asked why they didn't film there, to which the screenwriter replied that there was no tiger there. Xiaogui was disappointed because this was not how he imagined everything. Xiaogui expressed that this can be fixed. Xiaogui grabbed the tiger, moving one hand towards it. The director was scared and asked Xiaogui about the method he used to get him. Suitable Lin asked me to try it because it would make everything look more realistic. The director gave his consent, and then they began the filming process. Filming began. The scene began with a simple walk between the two heroes. At the same time, a bloodthirsty tiger glared at them from the bushes. The tiger jumped out of the bush at them, and the heroine quickly hid behind the hero. Instead of using the attack that everyone expected from him, he just kicked the tiger, causing it to fly away. Lin and the director were unhappy with this because according to the script, everything was not supposed to be like that. I don't know how to answer them. Xiaogui waved it off, saying that these were just reflexes. Xiaogui added that Taikon should be exactly the way he plays, and the script is written nonsense. The next scene began with Taikon's subordinate telling him that he was drinking and hunting, being lazy and ignoring what was happening at night. She also added that because of this, people were alarmed and the ministers were in confusion. The hero stated that, having disobeyed, a group of people made a sacrifice to heaven. In the next scene, Taikon was already talking about how he was asked to choose a hostage. He continued by talking about what he saw a eunuch from one family. The heroine wanted to stop his words while crying. After the end of the scene, the director immediately came running, praising Xiaogui's performance, but just as he wanted to suggest something, he was immediately interrupted by Lin. She asked him not to ask for much because she needed a break from work. Suddenly, Assistant Lin walked up to her and told her about the latest news. It turned out that at today's meeting, Yin admitted her guilt to the Zhou family, after which the family was accused of conspiring with the descendants of the gods. After hearing about this, Lin decided to sever all ties with the Zhou family. She told the assistant that she would take care of it herself. General Yang vehemently began to set fire to the Zhou family's laboratory. Elder Zhou was very dissatisfied with this circumstance of affairs and began to be indignant. They were interrupted by Deputy Commander Gong Sun, who said that this was his order, to which the family objected. Saying that they had no reason for this, the deputy was dissatisfied with their objection. The deputy pointed to the experiments being carried out in the Zhou family's laboratory and called this a sufficient reason. Elder Zhou scoffed and called it just a small study on modifying the human body, and was outraged that he would be accused of colluding with the descendants of the gods. Deputy Gong made it clear that such research requires a gene from the descendants of the gods, and asked how he could do such research without colluding. Elder Zhou stood her ground and asked for evidence, because there are many mysterious things in the world. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Yin, who showed the serum and admitted that she had stolen it from the Zhou family. Elder Zhou looked towards Yin and was stunned by this news. Investigators began to say that since the Zhou family has blood from descendants, which in turn is prohibited for distribution, then charges have been filed in the case. Others also came to the conclusion that the Zhou family clearly has a secret with the gods because there is no blood even in the capital. The deputy ordered the gun to be pointed at the elder. He was clearly frightened and denied the truth of their words, declaring that it was a lie. To which Yin joined in and reminded that the formula definitely belongs to them since she stole the serum from them. The elder angrily stated that the Association of Immortal Cultivators definitely had evidence. Lin, who had recently arrived, said that they could not prove this and asked them to stop talking nonsense because they had nothing to do with the Zhou family. Elder Zhou clearly did not expect this from the association and stood in bewilderment, not knowing what to do now. Beads of sweat ran down his face. He was very alarmed that the association had refused them. At the same time, Yang stated that there is a way to prove whose serum it was. Yang offered to check the fingerprints, to which Yin readily agreed because no one except her and the Zhou family touched the serum. Just when Yin wanted to give the serum to Sister Yang, Suddenly something happened and prevented her from doing so. Black chi formed in the sky. No one expected it at such a moment. It quickly moved towards Yin, who stood in bewilderment. Yang immediately rushed towards Yin, but due to the fact that Yin substituted her hand with the ring, everything turned out okay. Magic began to ooze from the ring and began to resist the black chi. The magic from the ring turned out to be stronger and eventually reflected black chi into everything. Yinny was very surprised by the effect of the ring and was glad that she was alive, but this was the merit of Xia Gui, who was standing behind him and no one saw him. Yang was ready after this act and realized that someone wanted to destroy the evidence. Having given the command, she headed into the sky for the upcoming battle. In an instant, the entire squad went up into the sky to follow the black chi. Having risen to the black chi, the squad realized that they were late. The deputy indignantly explained to the elder that such an attack could only be carried out by the descendants of the gods and the alien civilization Zeltic. He furiously shouted at the elder asking for an explanation, but the elder in turn denied involvement in this. After this, the deputy ordered that the Zhou family be captured and put on trial. The elder could not find a place for himself because he did not know what to do now. Xia Gui, who was observing all this, noticed that the black chi did not belong to the descendant of Liu Ji. Xia Gui began to assume that there was someone else behind the scenes. After much thought, Xia Gui finally decided that he needed to return home. When Yin returned from the doorway thanking Xia Gui for the gift of the ring, he was already sitting watching something through the virtual panel. Xia Gui asked her about her enemies and inquired about her well-being. She explained that the patriarch contacted Deputy Commander-in-Chief Xia Gong through a virtual game, adding that after that the Zhou family was completely destroyed. After her words, Xia Gui asked how the game was connected with the patriarch. Yin told him that the military was watching the game to select good candidates. She continued her story by saying that a third of the unit was chosen in this way. Xia Gui did not understand how this was possible and asked what kind of game this was. Turning around, Yin promised to teach him how to play since he was so interested, but only after returning to Sang Yu. Having said that it was time for them to return, Yin began to pack her things for departure. Xia Gui, sitting in his seat, asked her to return first. After all, he needs to star in a film and therefore he will go 2 days later. As soon as Yin asked what kind of movie it was, Xia Gui noticed that the video came out much faster than he expected. Through the display, he clicked on a new episode to play. Yin came up to understand what Xia Gui wanted to show. After clicking, comments on the series immediately began to flow. Everyone there praised the hero's beauty and indifference and were crazy about him. After the loading was completed, the episode began to play. The frames began to change, from the hero protecting the heroine from the tiger to their kiss at the end. Yin was fascinated by the actor's beauty, but after a moment she had an epiphany. Watching the scene of their kiss, Yin realized that this main character was played by Xia Gui. Yin was very outraged by Xia Gui's actions and accused him of coming here only to get closer to celebrities. Xia Gui brushed it off by saying that it was she who advised him to start acting. Grabbing him by the collar, Yin began to furiously demand the contract to make sure that he had not been deceived. Suddenly, a voice outside the door interrupted them and said that the Minister of Finance had arrived on a visit, and because of this, Yin needed to approach them. Yin was perplexed because she was not in the know. Xia Gui did not miss the moment and said that, even though she would accuse him of attracting butterflies and bees, she herself was not inferior to him in this. Upset, Yin asked Xia Gui if he was angry. Xia Gui just looked at her, realizing to himself that he was just her nominal boyfriend. Finally, Xia Gui got up and offered to go to them together. In the hall, the son of the financial minister and the minister himself were waiting for them, who told the elder about how he learned about Yin and could not stop thinking about her. The elder, in turn, replied that Yin already has a boyfriend. The minister said that it doesn't matter, after all. After looking at the documents, they found out that he was only a vassal of the Yin family. The conversation was abruptly interrupted by Yin, who had just arrived, expressing her dissatisfaction with the fact that it was none of their business who she liked. Adding that they felt good together, she asked them to leave. The minister's son, pointing at Xia Gui, said that this is not true love, and Yin will sooner or later understand this because he is only a servant. Xia Gui objected by asking if he considered knocking on the door to be true love. The minister's son said that this was done so that Yin would develop feelings for him, and the more she is with him, the faster she will forget him. Xia Gui was very surprised by his shamelessness, and Yin added that he was lying to himself. The minister who got involved began to justify his son. After all, there is a big difference between a son-in-law in the form of an ordinary servant and his son. His mention of his son-in-law surprised Xia Gui and Yin, and they did not know what to say in amazement. Suddenly, Lin burst in. Throwing open the door, she immediately declared that this son-in-law is not suitable for the Yin family. Lin's appearance stunned the minister and his son. They were greatly embarrassed by her appearance. Lin expressed her surprise at the presence of Minister Zhao. In turn, the minister was also surprised by the appearance of the senator's daughter. Minister Zhou suggested the possibility that Xia Gui might be the son-in-law of the god of war. Lin expressed her dissatisfaction by revealing that Xia Gui is her partner in the Taikang series. She also said that he would soon become a star and therefore could not be the son-in-law of the Yin family. She also added that Yin should have thought better and expressed that she and Zhou would be happy. Immediately, Yin interrupted her. Just when she wanted to declare that Xia Gui was her ex-husband, she hesitated and barely finished her last words. Confusedly, Yin noticed that Xia Gui was not even worthy of being a boyfriend rather than a husband. Here the minister's son intervened in the conversation, because he believed that there was no point in ignoring him. Before he could finish speaking, Yin immediately objected to him, and Lin also joined in, and they both told him to get lost. The minister's son, of course, did not expect this. He was stunned by the harshness of their words and stood in a stupor. After what happened, Xia Gui guessed that Lin was here on another matter and asked her. Lin, following him, of course, gave a positive answer. After the heroes left the room together, everyone was shocked that they knew each other. We saw a picture of Lin sitting on her knees asking for forgiveness from Xia Gui, and he was scolding her for imagining that they were close. She begged for punishment, saying that she should want what her mistress and master want and therefore she was wrong. Having warned her that no one has the right to decide anything on his behalf, he asked her to rise. He asked for this because Yin is here. Suddenly, Yin burst into the room with a flourish and announced that Lin's company was going to use people. And since she was Xia Gui's agent, she needed to be dealt with first. Having shown the contract, Lin allowed Yin to read it, but added that it was too late to change anything. After reading the contract, Yin was very surprised by its content because it was unprofitable for their company and was better than that of the most successful stars. Afterwards, Lin handed Xia Gui what he asked to get and just wanted to leave, but Xia Gui stopped her. Asking her to wait, he began to create something from the materials she provided. These materials formed one pill that was intended to improve the sword. Yin clarified whether this was a sword pill. The fact that Xia Gui simply held the weapon pill shocked them. Handing the pill to Lin, he added that he would become the guiding light of her heart on the path of sword cultivation. Lin clarified whether the materials he ordered to find were intended for this pill. Xia Gui admitted that, in the beginning, he didn't want anything from her. While Lin left them, Yin realized that her relationship with Lin was different from what she had imagined. She then asked Xia Gui why he asked Ling for cultivation materials and not her. Xia Gui explained that the remainder of the materials was for her, and considering that without her help, it is not known when she will be able to soar into the clouds. She was very pleased with his words and thanked him for it. Yin asked Xia Gui if he wanted to return home, because now Lin had something to do. A day later, they arrived at their home. After arriving, Yin asked Xia Gui if he wanted to play virtual games, and then gave her gaming room at his disposal. Xia Gui did not understand how to play and asked Yin if he needed to get inside. Yin gave a positive answer, explaining that as soon as he climbs inside, he will need to determine the level and turn on static compliance. Leaving Xia Gui to his own devices, she left, saying that she had business to do. Having learned that human genetic warriors were using this for cultivation, Xia Gui considered this a very good opportunity to figure it out. Going inside, the voice dispatcher asked him to relax and began counting down. Suddenly, Xia Gui found himself in a completely different place in front of the game guide. Having greeted the guide, he announced a check of physical fitness and physical status. Xia Gui stood very surprised because he did not expect that the prototype of the guidebook would be taken from Lin. She just wanted to announce his physical result, but then she froze with her mouth open in surprise. Xia Gui was perplexed and thought that she was frozen. Xia Gui finally realized that this was because his level was too high to understand this machine, and decided that he was imitating the strength of an ordinary security guard. The guide identified him as a third-level warrior with the specialization of strength and durability. The guide also asked if he needed to transfer the offline point because it detected a change in user. After Xia Gui stated that this was not necessary, he moved directly into the interstellar era. Having moved, Xia Gui felt something was wrong and turned around and finally saw what was the matter. In front of him were hot springs, and judging by the fact that there were only women in front of him, the springs were clearly female. Suddenly, the women's gaze fell on Xia Gui, accusing him of being a pervert. They gave an order to fight so that he would not escape. Xia Gui began to dodge numerous attacks on himself. He wondered how Yin could take a bath in the game. After numerous attacks, the women lost sight of Xia Gui and did not understand where he was. Noticing that he was running quite fast, they began to speculate about who this man could be. They found out that the system claims that this is a woman. One of them suggested that it could be a woman because of his long hair. Immediately, the second objected and said that with such strength and a powerful back like a gorilla, it is not advantageous to be a woman. After 10 minutes, Xia Gui barely pulled away and thanked his control of power, because if not for his level, which was higher than theirs, he would have been caught a long time ago. For Xia Gui, this experience was interesting because he had not run away from anyone like that for a long time. Having stepped on something, he realized that it was a trap. Suddenly, huge seals began to break out from under his feet and wanted to grab him. Xia Gui quickly dodged them, quickly attacking back. Suddenly, a warrior girl appeared above him and was rapidly moving towards him. Seeing her, Xia Gui quickly aimed his attack at her. The girl clearly did not expect this and flew away in pain. Afterwards, Xia Gui asked the girl the reason for her actions. Although he understood that after his actions at the source, this was not surprising. The girl explained her attack by saying that she wanted to test his abilities. Due to the fact that she was recently stuck in one of the locations, she was looking for a strong player like him. Afterwards, the girl asked Xia Gui if he was ready to help them. Considering this an interesting activity, Xia Gui readily agreed. Xia Gui wanted to know more about this game and was glad to see her offer. Joyfully, the girl said that she would immediately send him an invitation to the team. Xia Gui immediately received an invitation, which he in turn accepted. After he accepted her offer, a blue color lit up above them, indicating that they were ready to move. They moved to an abandoned mound in Bonqiling. Upon their arrival, they were greeted by Dark Archer Ning and Elementatist Z. Xia Gui asked the girl about them, and the girl said that she hired them because they needed help in battle. Both girls immediately recognized him as Taikan and guessed that he starred in the same series with Lin. The girls were very inspired by the fact that they would fight alongside any of their heroes, and never ceased to thank the girl for this opportunity. While Z and Ning could not get enough of it, the girl admitted that she did not pay attention to his appearance. She also added that now she does not know how to react. Her words confused them, and one of the girls asked if she had also watched the series Dak Xiao's Past, to which the girl made it clear that it was she who wrote this book. All three were shocked by her words. Not believing, they asked again if she was really Xiao Miao who wrote this novel. Shai Xiao stated that she did not know that she was so popular. After this, Xia Gui began to move towards the portal. The girls, perplexed, asked about the reason for his actions. Xia Gui explained that he wanted to help them pass the location so that they would later come back stronger. The girls wanted to restore it because they had already encountered bosses and understood how dangerous it was. Having passed through the portal, Xia Gui found himself inside the giant battleship, where a monster was already waiting for him. It turned out that it was the boss who was about to attack Xia Gui. Dodging the boss's attacks, Xia Gui began to quickly move towards him. The boss quickly collected mana in his hands for a more powerful attack. Just as the boss wanted to carry out his attack, Xia Gui immediately climbed on his head for his blow. Using his magic on the boss, he made the boss gradually begin to collapse. While the boss was falling apart and falling, the girls also came to Xia Gui through the portal. The girls were shocked by his strength. They couldn't believe their eyes because he defeated the boss so easily. Xia Gui asked Xiao if he needed to do anything else. Xiao checked and said that despite the destruction of the boss, the mission had not yet been completed. Xiao said that they were now playing for a special unit and introduced Xia Gui to the plot of the mission. She talked about how, in the Interstellar War, the FGT-14 ship was captured by the monsters of Zelta. Their mission is that they must return the ship and destroy the nest of enemies. Afterwards, Xiao went to the ship's control panel. In this field, she stuck a red stone to start an automatic restart. As soon as the process was started, they heard a voice of alarm. The voice said that they were being overtaken by a large number of unidentified creatures. They were stunned by the news they heard. Xiao gave the order and they took their positions. A large number of monsters were rapidly moving towards the group. The battle has begun. Xia Gui hit the monster who suddenly attacked Xiao. Ning threw a weapon to Xia Gui so that he could quickly get rid of the monsters. Grabbing the weapon, he realized that it was a Gauss cannon. After obtaining the weapon, Xia Gui quickly began disposing of large numbers of monsters with one shot. Xia Gui was excited because this weapon was breaking everything down to molecules. Continuing to split the monsters, he noticed that the weapon was not so bad. Pak Xia Gui protected them from monsters. Zhao repaired the console. The repair was carried out successfully and the system is about to start. Xiao also tried to change the movement and route. Turning on maximum speed, Xiao began to move straight into the nest. The ship was rapidly moving towards the nest. After destroying the nest, the mission was completed. They were given awards for completing the SSS level. After successfully clearing the location, the team returned to the abandoned mound. While Z noticed that they completed the level in only 2 minutes, Ning continued to praise Xia Gui. Xiao shared her doubts. She asked Xia Gui how he defeated the level 4 boss in a few seconds. While being on the third, Xia Gui gave a very simple explanation, explaining that he only directed all his efforts to the weak point. Xiao did not agree because he simply flattened him in a few seconds. Xiao expressed her dissatisfaction with the fact that, despite how strong Xia Gui is, he does not serve for the good of his country. She asked him if he wanted to join a special unit. I claim that this is impossible. Xia Gui asked if she could make it so that the Taikan from her book would not pester the heroine Chang Yi. Smiling, he continued, saying that she should help change the plot. She was confused by his statement. Having explained that this was unacceptable, Xiao made it clear that she would not be able to change the plot. But she said that she could change the plot a little more, after which he would be satisfied. After that, saying goodbye to everyone, Xiao left the game. In his office, Deputy Gong watched the series without taking his eyes off, after which Jan came because he ordered to call her. The deputy showed Commander Yang a TV series in which Xia Gui starred and asked if she had watched it. The deputy noticed that Taikon's acting is excellent, and he plays his role perfectly. Yang added that she doesn't think so about Lin's game. For Yan, her teacher's behavior was strange. The deputy then asked her if she knew the actor. Yang said that she knows him, and that he is Yin's boyfriend. The deputy explained that the department monitoring the virtual game told him that Xia Gui was currently there as a level 3 warrior. The deputy noticed his abilities and stated that he was needed in a special unit. Because Yang knows him, she was tasked with inviting him to join them. Yang accepted the order with dignity and began to carry it out. After finishing studying the game, Xia Gui decided to quit it. For Xia Gui, this was a unique experience. And leaving the game, he began to wonder what the Yin Fox was doing all this time. Entering the room, Xia Gui saw Yin sitting on the bed. As soon as Yin saw Xia Gui, she bombarded him with questions, asking whether he came out because he was bored or because the girl with the glasses didn't want him anymore. Xia Gui asked how she knew about the girl with glasses, to which Yin dismissed the fact that she knew this because she was a fox spirit. In fact, Yin knew about this because she is the vice president of a gaming company. Asking to change the subject, she walked towards Xia Gui. Yin suggested a joint game to Xia Gui, where they would complete tasks and complete levels together. Xia Gui, in turn, reminded her that they only have one gaming booth. Yin stated that, due to the unique design of their company, 2 people can easily fit there. So she asked him if he wanted to try. Suddenly, Xia Gui received a notification about the video. Yin was surprised that the video came from Yang. Yang invited Xia Gui to become a consultant in their special military unit. Yin was outraged by her proposal, citing the fact that a member of her family could not be Yang's subordinate. Despite Yin's words, Xia Gui expressed his agreement. Xia Gui guessed that Xiao was indeed in the army. Otherwise, Yang would not have come immediately after he left the game. Yang happily stated that this information would be included in the dossier, and of course the family now dare to say that he is their son-in-law. She didn't forget to encourage Xia Gui before leaving the couple perplexed by her actions. Suddenly, before leaving, Yang wanted to give him advice about the series. Yang stated that since Tai Kan is an emperor, it is common for him to have several concubines. She also recommended changing the part with Lin and filming a sex scene instead. Yin angrily burst into the conversation and said that this is not the series Yang is thinking about. Yang waved it off. saying that she was a match since the mission was completed. While Xia Gui was in his thoughts, Yin decided to tell him about her experiences. Yin noticed that he was now a rising star, as well as a senior officer. She shared that she now considers herself useless and of no benefit to him. Jia Gui explained that he does not make friends based on their benefits to him. Having calmed her down, he asked her to develop and cultivate, explaining that this would be enough for him. Yin agreed with his words, embarrassed. It turns out that Lin had been cultivating among the mountains all week. In the end, she was able to achieve what she wanted and achieved success in sword cultivation. Then she had a breakthrough in sword technique. Lin was undoubtedly happy about her cultivation success. After Xia Guiling arrived, she happily shared her progress. She told him that she was advancing in this technique with kilometer-long steps, and today she had a breakthrough thanks to Xia Gui's parting words. He noticed that she achieved a breakthrough due to her talent, adding that she is ideal for the path of a swordsman. Having knelt down in front of him, she expressed that she did not know how to repay him for his help. Encouraged, she asked to be punished for the previous act she had committed. Descending towards her, Xia Gui remembered that Lin owed him a debt for the scene that she refused to play with him. In a hurry, Lin stood up and announced that she would fix everything now, and suggested immediately moving on to the last dialogue. Suddenly, both of them received an alert via the bracelet. It turns out, it was a notification that they had updated the chapter of the novel on which they were filming a series. Lin was excited about this. She couldn't wait to film the new chapter quickly. Having opened the chapter, they began to read its contents. It was written there about their kiss together, after which Taikun leaned over and took off the heroine's clothes. The characters reread it embarrassedly and couldn't believe their eyes. They were very confused by the last lines. With his eyes burning, Xia Gui couldn't believe that Xiao thought this was a plot that he should like. Embarrassed, Xia Gui suggested not filming the scene if the plot was so confusing to Lin. Confused, Lin quietly muttered that they were actors and had to do this. In fact, Lin was very embarrassed and could not find a place for herself. She was also very excited because it was her first kiss. The scene began. The heroes were talking about how the heroine could cope with the work that Henge could not. Then the hero asked the heroine if she was sure of her words. The next scene began. As written in the plot, Lin grabbed him by the collar, after which the heroine suddenly kissed the hero, greatly embarrassing him. In the next scene, the heroine asked him how good she looked. After these words, the kissing scene began again. The heroine wrapped her arms around the hero's neck, after which the hero grabbed her around the waist and pressed her closer to him. Suddenly, Assistant Lin abruptly interrupted the scene. She was furious, as were Lin's other assistants. They accused him of being a pervert and told Lin that he was taking advantage of her. Lin called this absurd and stated that she was doing this because she wanted it. The assistant immediately objected, saying that this was Lin's first sex scene. While worried, she reminded Lin that she had never filmed such a drama before, to which Lin told her to shut up and not interfere with her work. In fact, Lin had her own plans. Now we move to the headquarters of a special unit, which is guarded by many employees. Yang and her deputy teacher listened to the soldiers' fine-tuning. O reported that on the southwestern coast a strange beast had risen from the sea. He added that the beast destroys cities and mountains on its way. It is believed that he may be connected with the gods. Suddenly, Commander Yang headed to the set, surprising everyone with her appearance. Lin asked Yang about the reason for her coming. Yang clarified with Xia Gui about what he said last time, about the fact that he knows about the movement of the gods. She also added that the southwest is infested with monsters, and suggested that Xia Gui go along and see for himself, to which Xia Gui agreed. Lin looked at Yang without taking her eyes off, and noticing this, she turned to Xia Gui. Yang said that it was urgent and he had to say goodbye to his girlfriend because they were leaving right now. Afterwards, the military from the unit went to study the southwest. The military began to attack the monster in the water from the air, and also people on land also did not lag behind. Numerous attacks were carried out on the monster, after which the monster began to radiate from within, destroying everything that came under its light. The sea began to rage from the monster's anger, and the military was given an order to retreat. The military understood that it was too late to retreat. They were outraged, not understanding how they could fight gods of the Qian Yuan level. Commander Yang immediately came to the rescue and asked to provide the monster to her. She quickly attacked the monster with her fire magic. There was a dangerous fight between the monster and Yang. Not far away, Xia Gui was watching this fight. Noticing that Yang is belligerent, the heavy fight continued, Yang rushing towards the monster. Their attacks were equal to each other, both attacking with all their strength. Suddenly, the monster's eyes lit up, and he prepared to attack. Yang barely managed to deflect from his beam. An explosion occurred where the beam hit, showing the full power of this attack. Yang turned to the monster, inquiring about the purpose of his attack, because with such attacks he could easily break through the coastal defense line. The monster explained that he was only here to convince her to give up. He continued explaining that she had been in the capital for a long time, and they had to resort to this method to lure her. Perplexed, Yang asked what he meant by the word surrender. The monster continued. He said that she went deep into the sea after him and thereby put herself in danger. He added that it would take her people at least 5 minutes to get to her. Yang was still perplexed and did not understand the meaning of his words. The monster asked her why she clings to this human world. The monster said that after the dragon appeared, they built an altar to the Father God. It turns out they have been calling for him since then, and now he has finally condescended to them. The monster, hoping, asked why. Being a descendant of the Scarlet Bird, she did not want to worship God the Father and join them for the sake of rebellion. Yang was surprised that God the Father came down. Xiagui was puzzled. After all, he didn't remember his appearance at the altar. Yang asked the monster if they were afraid that she would tell people about the approach of God the Father. To which the monster replied that even if humanity is ready, they will not be able to stop him. In private, Yang was worried about the approach of the father of all gods, Tai Qin. After all, it was obvious that humanity had no chance against him. The monster advised Yang to be more vigilant, because if she did not enlist the support of the Gongsun family, she will become an object of research and will also be placed in a laboratory. The monster continued, saying that there were many people around her who wanted her dead. He urgently demanded to bow to God the Father. He stated that this is the only thing after which she can become a minister. Yang interrupted him by asking if he thought Gongchun was the only one who believed her. Jan started talking about how this was her home. After all, she grew up on this land, and people remember how she defended these lands. Yang explained that even God the Father would not change her mind, and if he is against it, let him first burn with her spear. Having said this, Yang advised him to return, announcing that they will fight again after the arrival of God the Father. At the same time, ships were rapidly heading towards them from the coastal defenses. To Yang's words, the monster replied that she would soon regret her choice and change her mind, after which the monster disappeared, leaving behind a crater of water. One of the warriors approached Yang and asked if the battle was over. He continued his question, saying that apart from a huge explosion, nothing was visible. Throwing an enraged look at him, she asked him what would happen if they fought to the death, because they were slow in coming. The warrior could barely explain his actions by saying that they first needed to report to headquarters in order to begin a rescue operation. These excuses were not enough for her, and she went to ask her superiors this question directly. At the same time, the angry Xiagui was under the monster's underwater. While worshipping, the monster realized that in front of him was the Father God himself. He understood that he could not make a mistake because this aura is passed on to him through his family tree. Now he didn't understand who the dragon was that came to them. Showing off his aura, Xiagui stated that he was the Father God he was talking about recently. Xiagui expressed his disappointment that he was not recognized immediately. After all, he was confident in the divine prophecy of the monster and could not imagine that an impostor would appear. The monster said that the impostor showed himself only on the 49th and 77th calls. The monster added that it was a blue dragon with an aura similar to Xiagui. This was very tempting for Xiagui, and he assumed that this play was played on purpose. After this, Xiagui asked if he knew the reason why he did not join them as soon as he came down. The monster replied that he did not have the right to guess his will. Xiagui said that they would immediately bend the knee and begin to serve him. This is the reason. Xiagui explained that he did not want to watch them fight with people, capture the stars, and attack Zeltak. The monster did not understand the reason why their father god did not want all this. Xiagui began to talk about the times when he was an emperor and did the same thing over and over again. He stated that being human and testing their new technologies was better for him. The monster noted to himself that he imagined him to be completely different. Having announced his premonition about today's events, Xiagui asked the monster whether he had come only for Yang. Saying that he did not dare to lie to God the Father, he initiated Xiagui into their plan to lure Yang. He explained that with the help of spies among the people, they were going to undermine Yang's trust, after which they could launch a large-scale attack. Having said that he may be wrong because the premonition may also be because of people who can kill Yang. He advised the monster not to underestimate her. In order to find out the reason from the authorities, Yang headed to the command center of the southwest coast. From the doorway, she asked Commander Zhang, "Is he the one who gave the order to the soldiers to fight to the last drop of blood?" While Yang explained the circumstances that were there, the commander, not paying attention to her, devoured delicacies from his concubines. He waved it off, saying that his responsibilities were only to protect the coast from the monster, which he did. Wanting to make fun of Yang, he asked if that monster was her boyfriend with whom they were in cahoots. Yang expressed her outrage at his words. Stating that Yang was communicating with monsters, the commander gave the order to eliminate her. After the commander's words, the soldiers immediately stood ready, and then they completely aimed their weapons at Commander Yang, after which Yang told Commander Zhou what happened. In fact, the monster has not retreated, but is only waiting for them to do something stupid. Finally, the smug commander stood up from his seat to say a few final words to Yang. He stated that after Yang ends up in a military court, even he cannot imagine how many people want her dead. Suddenly, he offered her protection in exchange for cooperation. After the words were spoken, the commander received a tasty slap in the face from Yang, after which he flew off. Her action angered the commander, and he ordered her to be tied up to see if she could be tamed, after which Yang expressed her strong disappointment with his action. Yang then raised her hand in front of the soldiers as a gesture. Immediately, the soldiers pulled away, removing their sights from her. The soldiers gradually left their divisions, declaring that they were awaiting further orders from General Yang. The commander was stunned by the actions of his subordinates because he could not have expected this. Then Yang gave the order for the commander to be captured. The commander resisted, threatening her that they would come for her and declare her a rebel. Yang assumed that he forgot his place due to immense vanity. Yang made it clear that her position was much higher than his. She also added that according to the rules, she can take this place under her control in order to hold the defense. Before leaving, she gave the order to throw him into prison, after which she ordered to tell the deputy to prepare the troops for dispatch. The commander continued to mutter, after which the officer took off his shoes and decided to silence him in another way. Then he stuffed his stinking socks right into his mouth, declaring that he is a corrupt official who is sickening to even look at. They came to Yang to report and receive new instructions about Commander Zhou, who was successfully captured. Yang said that she had already notified the deputy and was waiting for new instructions about him. Thinking about the monster's words about what God the Father has returned, she ordered the soldiers to regroup and prepare their weapons. Observing the area, she stated that this line of defense was now useless. Xia Gui asked about the reason why Qian Yuan level gods landed on the mainland. The monster explained that if they had stopped in the city, people would have used everything they had. The monster continued his explanation by saying that people will certainly destroy the captured cities with nuclear explosions, and it will turn out that there will be nothing to fight for. Considering them reasonable, Xia Gui inquired about their future plans. The monster explained. He said that they were not going to destroy the country. After all, everyone has their own motives, but he confirmed that they were fighting for territory and resources. The monster said that they need to capture this place because of the pearls. It turned out that the dragon wants to get into the kingdoms of Tai Qin, and in ancient times these pearls were produced here. Suddenly, Xia Gui realized that the dragon's next step would be to destroy the entire country. Xia Gui began to angrily reprimand the monster for his actions. The monster justified himself by the fact that he had heard about how merciless people are when they are angry, and he assumed that this was just a war for territory. The monster then asked about Xia Gui's attitude towards the gods on the side of people, because they say a lot of bad things about them. Xia Gui confirmed the monster's words, but stated that it was not their fault at all. Xia Gui assumed that someone was behind the generation of relations between people and gods. He also suggested that something important happened here 24 years ago, and until all this is dealt with, nothing will change. The monster, not understanding, asked Xia Gui why he was so interested in the world. Because you can simply destroy humanity and play as much as you want. After which, Xia Gui expressed the reason that people are also his descendants. Then he asked the monster what a confrontation between people and the fact that they sharpen their knives against each other might look like for him. More seriously, Xia Gui made it clear that he could barely restrain himself, because it looked like his children were fighting among themselves. To which the monster asked to discuss this with Yang, and he himself stated that he was now in the house. Xia Gui urgently requested a meeting with the cultivator who was behind all of this. To which the monster, of course, readily agreed. After the conversation, the monster returned to its true form. Xiagui sat on the monster's back and they headed towards the cultivator. Sitting on the back of the monster, he noticed rays that were in the distance. Xiagui realized that he was one step late. The beam pierced the surrounding area, even bypassing Xiagui. We returned to the command center. Yang and her soldiers observed the area. She gave the order to activate the protective grid. She also ordered the background cannons to be prepared. After their defensive preparations were completed, one of the soldiers saw the huge whale Qianyuan in front of him. The soldiers were dumbfounded by its size. The appearance of the whale greatly angered Yang. Having asked to notify groups from the coast about the earthquake, she began to leave. Reporting her coordinates so that she would be covered from behind, Yang quickly left the room. After giving the order for its destruction, Yang began her attack against the whale. Yang fought more and more fiercely, expressing her desire to kill this whale. The battle went on as usual. The subordinates were going to increase their military power to better help Yang. Xiagui was still watching the turn of events. For Xiagui, this was a unique battle. After all, it's not often that you see technology versus immortal technology. The monster wondered why Xiagui did not interfere, even though he stated that he did not want a war. To which Xiagui made it clear that due to equal forces, they still could not defeat each other, and he, in turn, could not miss this fun. Xiagui did not understand why the gods started the war because they were not confident in their victory. This thought greatly worried Xiagui. He did not understand what he was missing. The monster plaintively stated that he was not hiding anything from Xiagui. He noticed that the monster wouldn't even have the courage to do this. Xiagui suddenly felt something, and he said that he would then ask about the people who are now above them. Looking at the sky, Xiagui realized that they were approaching. Only he didn't understand whether it was the third level of the formless realm or a follower of the path of magic. A second priest appeared to them and scolded the monster Luan Chu for not participating in the battle. Luan was frightened by his appearance and asked Xiagui to protect him, because it was his fault that he did not participate in the battle. Xiagui stated that this was not a problem, but added that he did not want to reveal his identity just yet. Luan began to defend himself, blaming Xiagui for not being able to participate in the battle. At first glance, the second priest considered Xiagui to be human. Assuming that among people there is also a formless kingdom, the priest asked Xiagui who he was. Posing as a messenger for the people, he expressed a desire to meet God the Father, citing that they have a lot to discuss. The second priest stated that he was here only because Commander-in-Chief Gongsong was still alive and asked if he wanted to make peace. In private, the priest did not understand how Xiagui radiated power. Although he had only reached the early stage of formlessness, Xiagui was perplexed. He realized that they wanted Gongsong dead. Xiagui finally realized that they want Gongsong dead, because after this, people will be beheaded and they will have to surrender. While Xiagui was putting the puzzle together in his head, he felt a mental connection. It was Lin who called him. He ordered to check if she was okay, then divided his soul, which he ordered. Returning to the conversation, Xiagui apologized and asked to continue. Then he inquired about the name of the priest. The priest's name was Lin Yuan. Xiagui introduced himself in response and called himself a movie star. At the same time, there was a fight between Lin and an unknown girl who demanded something from Lin. The unknown person stated the difference in strength and claimed that she had 10 ways to make her obey. Suddenly, someone pulled the unknown woman's sword towards him. It was Xiagui who had recently appeared. He explained that this is the Tao sword that he lost in the desert a long time ago. Lin was glad that he came because she was convinced that he was not lying about the call. She asked to save her quickly. Having declared that he never lies, he began to descend towards them. The unknown woman realized that he had come in the form of a divided soul and began to ask him about this and about the sword, the origin of which he knew. With herself, she understood the power of Xiagui and realized that the sword was somehow connected with him. Lin explained that the unknown person asked her to join the gods in killing Goog Sun. At the same time, the unknown suggested the possibility that Xiagui might turn out to be the father god. Having found out that Lin was not under mind control, she realized that God the Father himself was behind her. Deciding that if Xiagui gets angry, she won't live, she decided to take advantage of the fact that only his spirit was here and escape. When suddenly her cloak was incinerated and she herself fell to her knees, Xiagui explained that if she were from the formless realm, she would be able to escape. But since she is a descendant of the Tao, where all abilities are created in his image, she will be completely under his influence. Realizing that she had no other choice, she began to ask him for forgiveness. Sitting quietly, she now asked what would happen to her if she ran away again. Xiagui asked why they consider resistance to him blasphemy. After all, he will only be glad of her desire to escape. After all, the desire for freedom is characteristic of Tao. But after this, Xiagui immediately became angry and asked for an explanation about the fact that she was deceiving his people by using his name and enjoying his fame. He asked Lin about the punishment she deserves. Lin enthusiastically asked to put the slave mark on her too. The girl was strongly against this. She explained her point of view by saying that initially the lands belonged to God, and they are only fighting for what belonged to them and is now captured by people. Yagai expressed his indifference, explaining that she was being used and did not know what she was doing. Handing her an earpiece, he offered to listen to her what happened while they were talking. In the headphones, I could hear the news about the murder of Gunsun and the order to go to the eastern part of the city. The girl was very frightened after what she heard. She immediately began to justify herself. Xiagui said that he was aware of this. He explained that someone behind the scenes is pulling the strings, and that's who he wants to find. He also added that regardless of the success or failure of the murder, people will believe that they were gods. Having said that a war of annihilation could begin at any moment, he again added that this situation was carefully planned. After that, he asked the girl for help because he was too lazy to deal with it. The headquarters was protected by a dome, but it was constantly being forged. Only the flying swords wanted to pierce the deputy. Xiagui immediately appeared and successfully got rid of them. Xiagai expressed his joy at being able to catch up with the deputy. The deputy was delighted that Xiagui saved him. Xiagui also expressed his desire to talk privately because he wants to report some things about the assassination attempt, after which the soldiers arrived and were interested in the condition of the commander-in-chief. One of the soldiers openly expressed his hostility towards demons. The deputy immediately stopped him and ordered them to report to the head that the situation was under control and let the rest proceed to headquarters. The commander-in-chief expressed his desire to talk to Xiagui. Then he ordered not to let anyone in, even if it was a general. Xiagui thought that despite his injuries, the commander-in-chief did not panic. Xiagui was convinced that he held his post as commander-in-chief for a reason. The commander-in-chief invited Xiagui into a room with no one in it. After Xiagui gave permission, Lin and the unknown woman went out to show who the real killer was. The unknown woman apologized for not being able to deliver him alive, making it clear that the killer destroyed his soul on his own. Due to the fact that the killer's form was like that of members of the Immortal Society, the commander-in-chief assumed that a person of divine origin was plotting against him. The unknown woman made it clear that the commander-in-chief's assumptions were not entirely correct because he was an elder of the Heavenly Path sect. She added that he was a human cultivator cultivating his skills at the top of Hengyang Mountain. Lifting the fabric, the commander-in-chief was convinced that there was a person under him. The commander-in-chief stated that this was a man who had been converted, adding that in fact they are all gods in disguise. He also shared his experiences about the powers of God the Father, explaining that as soon as he gains strength, it will echo and then the assassination attempt will be just the beginning. The unknown woman stated that the order came only from the elder himself and not from the sect. The commander-in-chief doubted her information, asking who this girl was. She immediately announced that she was the head of this sect, as well as one of the 4 priests, and her name is Shan Zhao. The commander-in-chief was surprised by her statement, and Shan was angry at the way he looked at her. Here, Xiagui joined the conversation, explaining that there is no evidence for Shang's words, and it is not possible to convince the top of humanity of this. Therefore, Xiagui proposed to find out the elder's story by hearing from him directly. The commander-in-chief did not understand how Xiagui was going to examine the soul of the deceased. Xiagai explained that even if the soul is destroyed, he can still look into the past. With one hand, Xiagui began to replay events from the past. In the past, the assassin was shown to be thinking about capturing the king's daughter, and he won't tell anyone that Yin is a fox spirit because she's an idiot. The killer expressed hostility towards Yin, although he knew that she was a true descendant. While Xiagui was glad that the elder called Yin an idiot, the commander-in-chief stood in amazement at the technique of returning to the past. He was surprised by the scale of Xiagui's powers, and noticed that even the gods of the sect respected him. In the past, the elders talked about the arrival of Zeltf, further, and that his master must deal with Gongsun for the fall of humanity. Then Shang was there and told him not to kill Gongsun because he might be useful. In the following excerpts, the elder was shown explaining to Zelta that he was obliged to obey the leader's orders, after which, angry, Zelta began to threaten the elder, after which the next memories showed that the elders were mind-controlled. After this, the picture above the heroes evaporated and turned into smoke. Xia Gui made it clear to the commander-in-chief that the elder's mind was controlled by Zelt. So it turns out that the gods were not involved in this. The commander-in-chief was tormented by guesses about Xia Gui. He wanted to ask him directly, but then he was afraid that he might be on the side of the gods, and so he decided to pretend that he did not understand anything. Shan noticed that the elder was faithful to God the Father to the end, despite the fact that he was controlled like a puppet. Shang was outraged that despite the death of a follower, Xia Gui still remained calm. She accused him of the fact that, despite the fact that he talks about neutrality, he ultimately chooses the side of the people. Xia Gui declared his hopelessness because he was already dead. In turn, Lin stated that she had not forgotten everything, but he was planning to return his soul. Everyone was dumbfounded by this information and waited for an explanation from Xia Gui about the return of the soul. Xia Gui explained that Zelt used to change the form of consciousness which scatters a person's soul, but the soul can be returned if a way is found to gather the souls together. Xia Gui explained his early inaction by saying that he did not know whether the elder was worthy of a second chance. However, after seeing his background and Yin score, he decided that he would help him and not sit idly by. Xia Gui said that the unification of the soul requires a special herb called Bright Night. From the look of the commander-in-chief, Xia Gui assumed that he wanted them to leave. After this, Xia Gui ordered the girls to go in search of grass. After they left, Xia Gui asked the commander-in-chief to ask what he previously wanted because the girls had left. Without allowing him to ask his question, Xia Gui asked him to take off his clothes. The commander-in-chief was confused and did not understand why Xia Gui was asking him about this. Xia Gui decided to calm him down, saying that there was nothing unnatural about no god. With prayer, he clarified to what extent he should undress. He was amazed that Xia Gui was not embarrassed by anything. Xia Gui teased him, saying that a grown man was embarrassed to be seen naked. Embarrassed, the deputy announced his status, and because of this, he is not obliged to undress for no reason. Suddenly, Xia Gui explained in a serious tone that he had a serious wound on his back that he was going to cure. The commander-in-chief scolded Xia Gui for not saying this earlier. The deputy thanked Xia Gui, to which he praised him for his willpower. Having started the treatment, Xia Gui inquired about the reason why the deputy wanted him to send those two out. The deputy began with the fact that the Zelts have been seeking war between gods and people for a long time, but in order to overcome them, it is necessary to unite. Realizing that they wanted him to go to the gods for negotiations, he praised the deputy for a good idea. Xia Gui understood why the deputy was wearing artifacts. Their purpose was to hide the dragon's aura. The deputy gave a positive response to Xia Gui's guesses and asked about his willingness to take on the task of reconciling the two races. The commander-in-chief decided with himself that if Xia Gui is the true father god, then the war will end, and if not, he will not allow him to be near his descendants. Xia Gui agreed, promising that he would do as the deputy said. Because they have little time, the deputy decided to give Xia Gui a warrant. Xia Gui decided to immediately set off as soon as he brought the elder back to life. Wishing him to return unharmed, the deputy announced that he was waiting for good news, but the manner was exactly like Xiao's. After the girls returned with the herb that Xia Gui asked for, he began the treatment. Suddenly, the elder opened his eyes. Shan was very happy about this event and said that it was God the Father who brought him back to life after he was killed. The elder, weeping, thanked God the Father for salvation and declared her loyalty to him. Xia Gui assured him that he knew about his loyalty. He also said that it was not the time for him to cry and asked him to get up. Hinting at a different greeting, Xia Gui asked Shang the reason why she did not greet him the same way, and she, in turn, stated that she would do this as soon as he at least showed his dragon form. Xia Gui explained that the azure dragon is just a form of his essence, and what she now sees in front of her is the original form. Both the elders and Shan froze in shock after the words were spoken. The elder was already ready to kill himself again after this statement. After all, he considered God the Father to be a man. Xia Gui said that he had fox blood flowing in him to somehow calm them down. Ayagui began to talk about the lonely nine-tailed fox. He learned that his grandmother was the rightful princess of the nine-tailed foxes in Tushna. Shan then continued with the words, "With the newlyweds, everything begins to flourish." Xiaogui was very surprised that Shang knew the song from Tushan. She stated that part of her blood was given by the former king, and because of this, she knows this song, and she also has the blood of the nine-tailed fox. After which, Xiaogui realized that the last king was a fox, and for this reason, they were looking for the descendants of the fox and chose Yin as their target. The elder explained that humanity killed their king, and therefore they are looking for his blood to collect again into one. The elder stated that they never expected great deeds from Yin, because even Shang could cope with the work of a leader better. Shang, noticing the long tongue of the elders, reminded him that Yin is Xia Gui's girlfriend. For this, the elder again planned to die as a sign of punishment. Xia Gui stated that he now knows why the Celtic aliens deceived them so easily. Xia Gui began to share his thoughts that 24 years ago on the day of the death of the Demon King, the conflict between people and descendants intensified, and now, after so many years, they fell into this trick again due to obsession with blood. Stating that there was something else behind the death of the Demon King, he opened their eyes to what was happening. Worried, Shan asked about their next steps, to which Xia Gui replied that the priority now was to stop the conflict, declaring his desire to see the Azure Dragon and asked to send it to the battlefield while the fiery Hong Yuan bothered him. Kneeling down, Shan immediately began to carry out his order. Xia Gui announced his return to his body to enjoy the spectacle and asked Lin to take care of everything. She in turn stopped him, declaring that she had something to say. Lin shared her guesses about Shan, asking her not to trust her. She added that she serves the king of the fox more than him. When Xia Gui inquired about Ling's solution method, she advised him to put the same mark on her so that she could serve him with all her heart. To which Xia Gui asked to first show by example. At first, Lin was surprised by Xia Gui's words and didn't know what to do. Then, clinging to Xia Gui, she announced that she obeyed. Ling misunderstood and began to cling to Xia Gui. Stopping Lin, he said that he was just mocking her to see what she would do. Lin replied that she will do what Xia Gui says because she has the mark of a slave, after which Xia Gui asked if she was sure that she even had this mark. Lin was excited by his words because she didn't understand where her mark on her forehead came from. Lin realized that if the mark had not been there all this time, then she had obeyed him sincerely. Xia Gui touched her forehead and said that he could change the appearance of her mark. Just as Lin wanted to clarify, Xia Gui immediately moved back into his body. Looking in the mirror, she discovered that her mark was now in the form of a turtle. At the same time, the second priest asked Xia Gui whether he was saying that he was a traffic star. The priest considered this a mockery of him. Confirming his words about the star, Xia Gui ordered the priest to take him to God the Father as quickly as possible. The second priest announced that God the Father would arrive soon, offering to watch the battle for now. The battle was in full swing, with attacks and explosions visible everywhere. Shells were flying from the ships towards the whale. While dodging, the whale realized that they underestimated the strength of people. After all, 100 years ago, everything was completely different. The second priest, who was watching the battle, began to express his guesses that people who rely on science will really be able to return the high level of the Qianyuan kingdoms. After Xia Gui asked the priest why he was telling all this to him, a man, the second priest announced that he did not consider Xia Gui a person, because the will of people is weak and will not be able to reach the formless kingdom. Pointing out that Xia Gui only achieved the rank of captain, the priest invited him to join him and work for a great cause. Thoughtfully, Xia Gui asked if the priest wanted him to go over to him instead of God the Father. Xia Gui then asked in a serious tone if the second priest wanted to replace God the Father. Xia Gui praised him for his ambition and expressed his admiration. The priest replied that the leader of the descendants must have a stronger will, but the same cannot be said about their father God. Xia Gui understood that despite the fact that Kang Long is a fake, his subordinates still want to betray him. Xia Gui asked the priest about the reason why he has hostility towards God his father, and also to demonic cultivation, because descendants are born from the perception of God. The priest explained that he does not consider the path of heaven to be the path of blood, murder, and lust. And after he saw the true form of God the Father, he became convinced that the path to which he was striving was the true path of God the Father. Xia Gui asked the priest if he was sure about lust. to which the priest explained that God the Father is a lustful old man who has fun with women. He also added that Zhang Xiao was also valued for his lustful skills. The priest then plaintively asked why he should remain loyal to an old man who uses power for personal gain. Xia Guai expressed his agreement with the priest's words and said that God the Father should be punished. Xia Gui understood that Zhang Xiao could not serve people since she was still a virgin. Therefore, Xia Gui understood that Kang Long made such a statement to ruin Xia Gui's reputation. And in the end, Xia Gui realized that his name was stolen by someone he knew. The priest continued. He said that he appreciates strong people like Xia Gui, and since he was also disappointed in God the Father, he again asked him to join. Suddenly, an azure dragon appeared, scolding the priest for not having finished them off yet. God the Father ordered Yang to be captured, adding that he would take care of the naval guns himself. While the priest justified himself by saying that his subordinates were already doing this, Xia Gui realized who God the Father really was. Xia Gui realized who was actually using his name. This made Xia Gui angry, and he quickly wanted to punish her. Yang noticed how the father god, Song Long, appeared and asked everyone to be on alert. The priest, as soon as he saw Yang, began to attack with his snakes. One of his kites began to attack her, barely dodging. She thought about defeat. After all, God the Father himself and even his descendants entered the battle. The snakes from the head began their swift attack. The soldiers announced the readiness of the space cannon. The shot from the space cannon was very powerful. Yang ordered all the warships to turn on the Star Destroyer's cannons, asking to aim specifically at the dragon. The dragon began shelling. He did not expect this and was at a loss. With fear, the dragon repeated that he was not afraid of them and they would not be able to intimidate him. All the ships that were on land and water opened fire. Due to the greater number of attacks, the dragon was unable to dodge them. While Shan and the Elder were able to pull away, all the attacks hit the dragon. God the Father could no longer continue to float because the attacks were too strong. The soldiers saw that God Father Kang Long was wounded and ordered to prepare for retreat. The priest called the people cowards because they retreated, and Xia Gui called it a wise choice to preserve his strength. The priest made it clear that Xia Gui would not live long because he did not take any part in the battle. The priest suggested stopping Yang instead and saving the Father God, because he still has a chance to survive. Xia Gui thanked the priest for reminding him of this, but at that time the priest had already begun to sneak behind him. The priest decided that if he kills a person in the formless kingdom, all people will become slaves of the descendants of the gods. The priest was plotting new atrocities. He wanted to take possession of the dragon's body and control it since it was wounded. He wanted to become the new Father God. Xia Gui understood his intentions and expected him to act. He feigned pain after the snake bit him on the shoulder. With excitement, Xia Gui asked if the priest was afraid that Xia Gui would reveal the true face of the Father God. The priest stated that the Father God could not be knocked down by this level of attacks. He said that he guessed that God the Father was in the late stage of the formless kingdom. The priest realized that Xia Gui was strong and decided that he would not leave him in case he and the people were against him. While the priest was declaring that people should be servants of the gods, Xia Gui grabbed the snake that was on his shoulders with just one hand. Xia Gui said that he considered the priest to be a Zelt spy, but now I am sure that he is just a warmonger. After tearing off one of his snake hairs, Xia Gui emphasized their ability to explore souls, but stated that they were disgusting. The priest was perplexed because he believed that he was under his control. Xia Gui made it clear that he was not initially under his control, and this was just an improvisation. The priest was very frightened. He could not understand how humanity could have such an ally that could crush it, even though he is now in the formless realm. Suddenly, Shan pointed her spear at the Father God. The priest began to declare this, and Xia Gui grabbed him by the hair and said that she probably also noticed that God was not real. Xia Gui also asked the priest not to worry because the Father of all gods cannot die. Then he asked to borrow his hair for a while. Twirling the hair of the second priest, Xia Gui quickly directed his hair somewhere. At the same time, Shan was rapidly heading towards God the Father. She decided that in this way she would repay her debt. Suddenly, hair of snakes appeared out of nowhere and grabbed Shan from all sides. It was Xia Gui, who was now pulling her towards him with the help of his hair. At the same time, the dragon quickly defended itself against Yang's attacks. Just as he was about to release his most powerful attack, Xia Gui called him over. Hearing this, the dragon walked towards Xia Gui. interrupting the fight and leaving Yang confused. Jia Gui told him to take care of the second priest and Shang. Yang, who was watching this, was surprised that Jia Gui had dealt with two formless kingdoms, and given that he effortlessly dealt with the gods, her guesses about him began to be confirmed. Throwing the priests onto the dragon's back, he headed towards God the Father. The priest said that he felt a certain connection with Jia Gui and asked the priestess Shang who it could be. The priestess Shang answered him that he had already guessed who he was. The second priest finally realized that the father of all gods had finally awakened, and this was Jia Gui. Approaching the azure dragon, he inquired about the reason why she impersonated him. Hearing the voice, the dragon barely opened his eyes to find out who was talking to her. Climbing to the head of the dragon, Jia Gui began to ask if the father god would like to talk to him, the messenger of the people. She brushed it off, saying that he had caught the wrong dragon. Jia Gui decided to help her so that she could take on her true appearance. Suddenly, the dragon began to transform into its true form. The priest watched in shock as Kang Long took on his human form. Kang Long calmly complained that Jia Gui was too aggressive, calling him a master. He stated that it was painful, and Jia Gui shouldn't have done that because she had already taken on her true form. Realizing that this was the most careless merchant in this solar system, as well as the youngest princess of the Xian family, Xian Yu Song, he also threw her onto the dragon's back. He began to reprimand the gods for following this idiot in an attempt to find a replacement for the father god. Xian stated that she was hurt by Xia Gong's anger. Looking at Xian, the priestess decided that Xia Gong was going too far, to which he replied that she stole his name and therefore deserves it. Going down to Qian, he asked her about the reason why she pretended to be him using his name. He asked if she was the instigator of the war between gods and people, and asked her to be completely honest. Qian began to make excuses, accusing her descendants of being constantly ready to fight people. She stated that it was they who mistook her for the gods, so in the end, it was their fault and not hers. The priest was amazed at the scale of her lies. The priest said that she was blatantly lying. After all, he mistook her for God the Father only because of her aura. The priest also stated that they did not want to involve anyone else during their rituals, and at the same time they understood that God the Father was a fake. Jia Gui assured the priest that he believed her. But I just didn't understand how she achieved such an aura on her own. Suddenly, Jia Gui grabbed Xian with one hand. He picked her up by one leg and started shaking her. The jewelry she had been stealing began to fall out of her. The priests watched this with their mouths slightly open in surprise. Falling on your jewelry in an attempt to save it, she assured that she would tell him everything. She explained that during the war, Jia Gui dropped many relics, which she later successfully picked up. Because of this, the ritual mistook her for God the Father. Indifferently, Jia Gui asked if this was the reason why she gave the sword to Shang and asked to attack the southeast coast. Jia Gui came to the conclusion that she was lying. Xian stated that everything was not like that at all, but that she was collecting relics in honor of him, to preserve his memory. Xian continued that now she can only be happy because she found out that he is alive. Jia Gui still didn't believe her, because it was strange that she had collected all the parts of his magic weapon. Jia Gui stated his guess that part of Xian still wants to collect the information stones that he left in this area of the sea. Breaking the shackles in the form of the priest's hair, Jia Gui told them to create the soil. Jia Gui made it clear that their actions were preparing the ground for the Zelts. Ships began to be seen from the sky. Suddenly, everyone received a notification about the first level of danger. The Zelts invaded the Donglin galaxy. Jia Gui told those watching that the Zelts were watching them and waiting for the moment. He asked them, "Do they still want to continue this absurdity?" Both priests immediately knelt down and asked to be given a chance to atone. Suddenly, Xian became involved in the conversation and offered to give orders to her fleet of merchant ships. She said that the war with the Zelts would occupy them for centuries, after which Jia Gui asked Xian for the exact coordinates of her fleet, what she successfully shared. While Jia Gui was creating something with his magic, Xian asked about the reason why he needed precise coordinates. It turns out he was creating a portal. It led to the place that Xian indicated in her coordinates. Suddenly, Jia Gui grabbed her by the collar. She also didn't understand what he was going to do, after which Jia Gui with a jerk sent her into the portal and told her to go home. After she entered it, the portal closed willfully. Jia Gui ordered the priests to go to the other two and tell them to stop fighting with people. Suddenly, Yang, who was watching this, called out to Jia Gui, causing him to look at his side. Continuing, she praised him for the successful negotiations, after which she asked Xia Gui to return to the ship because she wanted to talk to him. There was a conversation. Yang asked Xia Gui if the descendants of the gods were ready to make peace. Just as the priest wanted to address Xia Gui, calling him Father God, he immediately directed his gaze in his direction, making it clear that he was still hiding his identity. The priest made a reservation and said that God the Father created this planet for all of them, and therefore they should not be at enmity. So he added that it was in the treaty that they should unite in the event of a Zelt's invasion. The priest said that he would protect Yang. After all, she is Xia Gui's girlfriend. The priest enthusiastically asked for Xia Gui's praise, to which Xia Gui replied that their paths would now diverge because they must prepare for the upcoming war. He explained that with the gods and the formless realms, humans have a chance to defeat Zelt. Yang was taken aback by his statement and asked if he would participate in the war. Xia Gui stated that he had more important business waiting for him. After all, he understood that from the void they were being watched by the named god who was watching what was happening. Xia Gui should meet and deal with him, after which Xia Gui set off on a journey to the named god. A demon god was waiting for him and began to threaten the power of the Tai Chin kingdom. Xia Gui noticed that the void demon god had absorbed almost all the dark energy from space. Xia Gui realized that he was fueled by anger, blood, fear, and a lust for murder. Xia Gui was not surprised in his desire to start a war because in this way, he would remove his thirst. Xia Gui clarified about the rift from which he came out, because it could have formed after his first battle, to which the demon god made it clear that his words were true, and asked whether Xia Gui would be considered his father god. Xia Gui allowed himself to be called that, but added that he was unlikely to recognize him. The enraged demon god recalled that Xia Gui now only has 80% of his total strength. Considering that they are equal, the demon was dissatisfied with the fact that he considers himself his father. He stated that Xia Gui would become his servant after the fall of the Kong Long star, to which Xia Gui praised him for his self-confidence, calling the plan primitive. He gave the demon a couple of points for his villainous image. The demon was angry that Xia Gui was judging him and decided to attack him. The demon explained his early fear by saying that Xia Gui was a big shot. Now, when he saw its insignificance, he decided to wait for the completion of the Zelt invasion, and then absorb all the energy of the planet. One by one, the Zelt fleet began to break up. The demon made it clear that he did not expect this. The demon was perplexed because, in his opinion, the war between people and gods should have been in full swing. After which, he told about his plan where he brought the kingdoms of Tai Ching so that Kang Long would not have any Shans. Xia Gui asked the demon with a grin how he could not foresee such an outcome of events. Xia Gui explained that a substance like this demon is not subject to any powers, and because of this, they are complacent, for the same reason they can never reach the highest path. Xia Gui made it clear to the demon how stupid he was, in hoping that the Zelts would win if he held back Xia Gui. Afterwards, Xia Gui called the demon the most useless god of all. All this time, the demon god continued to fall apart. The demon god asked about the meaning of his actions, because he would still be able to recover. Xia Gui thought that by corrupting the inhabitants of the galaxy, the demon could quickly recover. Therefore, Xia Gui decided that he would kill the demon god, after which Xia Gui summoned a magical artifact. It was a cup capable of sealing the universe. With his help, Xia Gui decided to end the demon. As soon as the roof of the bowl was opened, the demon began to be sucked into this magical artifact. But the demon grabbed Xia Gui's artifact. He mockingly asserted that he would not be able to defeat him. Xia Gui realized that with his current strength, he could only hold him back. He was annoyed that he had wasted the artifact of his entire life. Suddenly, Xia Gui turned around, hearing the voice of a girl behind him, declaring that she would help him. He was interested to see who it was, but when he turned around, he was dumbfounded. It was one of the priestesses who said that she had come to tell that the Zelts had been defeated and had completely retreated. Deciding that there would be a generous reward for attacking this monster, she quickly moved towards the demon to attack. The demon god easily pushed her away, calling her a pathetic, formless kingdom. Taking advantage of this, Xia Gui pulled his artifact back to him, asking that the demon not drag anyone into their conflict. Now the artifact has finally managed to pull the demon god into itself, after which the priestess thanked Xia Gui for her help. Fixing his gaze, Xia Gui realized that she was a centaur. She was worried and afraid that Xia Gui might not like it. Having said that it looks beautiful in its own way, Xiagui realized that he wanted to ride her because it seemed to him that riding her would be more convenient than riding a dragon. The priestess was confused by his statement. Deciding that he wanted to sleep with her, she expressed her consent. Xiagui quickly made it clear that she did not understand him, explaining that any man likes horses. While they were talking, the demon god again broke out of the artifact. The priestess thought that Xiagui had destroyed the demon. Xiagui explained that the demon feeds on negative emotions and therefore will not die as long as there are living beings in the world. Xiagui explained that he is not at the peak of his power, so for now, he can only control him. After his words, the priestess suddenly asked to ride him. The priestess explained that this is not what he is thinking about. She said that she has the ability with which Xiagui can recover and regain her previous strength. Xiagui then thanked her for the fact that now his favorite artifact would be preserved. As soon as the demon broke out again, Xiagui, riding the priestess, rushed towards the demon with great speed. Raising your sword, Xiagui felt himself filled with Zifu's energy. He knew that he wouldn't confuse this with anything, and understood that he was at the peak of his capabilities. With great speed, they hit the demon directly. Finally, Xiagui managed to send the demon into the destroyed space. Watching the demon god disappear, Xiagui wished him luck in getting out of there. After the fight ended, Xiagui asked to return to human form and not show this form in front of him again, to which the priestess was indignant because recently he called her beautiful. Xiagui stated that he only said how beautiful the horses were. Even though he had to ride a dragon, he would still prefer horses and would happily ride one. He also talked about how comfortable it was to ride her and informed her that someday he would make her his mount. Having admitted her guilt, the priestess decided to ask him a question about which side he would choose if the conflict with people repeated. She also clarified whether he wants to unite the universe. Xiagui explained that he did not have time for this, nor for senseless wars. He stated that he gives them wisdom and is not obliged to do the rest. Not believing she clarified whether he would really accept neutrality, Xiagui explained that both people and gods are his descendants, and he does not and will not have favorites. For numerous questions, Xiagui called the priestess a sly fox, asking whether she was satisfied with his answers. Opening up space above them, she stated that she did not want to hide anything from Xiagui. Therefore, she invited me to look into the space of her soul. After they entered, he saw the Fox King in front of him. After all, the priestess was also a descendant of the Fox King. Xiagui realized that the fox actually hid his spirit in the depths of Shang Zhao's soul. Finally realizing that the descendants were not looking for a replacement for the king, but only for his reincarnation. He also realized that the fox spirit is reborn every 24 years from flesh and blood. Xiagui inquired about the reason why she devoted herself entirely to searching for him at the site of the destruction of the remains. When he finished, he took it as a sign of loyalty to him. The priestess explained that because he was biased towards her, she decided to prove her loyalty. After the priestess reported that she did not know where the fox was reborn, Xiagui realized that they did not guess that it was Yin because of her character as a little fox. He understood that after her personality was revealed, she would be able to unite with her original consciousness and gain the karma of the Fox King. This will lead to her becoming king and ruling over the descendants of the gods. He thought about what to do. On the one hand, he could subjugate the king of the Yin Fox so that she would immediately reach another level. From another country, he wondered whether he should show respect to the king and keep his mind intact. The priestess interrupted his flow of thoughts, believing that he still did not trust her. Having opened the way, he ordered her to follow him. Surely the battle is already over. Xiagui decided to first ask Yin what kind of life she wanted, at the same time showing respect for the king and herself. At the height of the war, the soldiers fought against monsters arriving from Zelt. Having destroyed the monster, Yang announced that the last wave of monsters was overtaking them and asked them to prepare. The soldiers took their positions, preparing to attack. The monster was catching up with Yang. She was about to attack the monster in response, when suddenly the monster stopped at the last moment due to the fact that it turned into ice. Then something chopped the monster into two parts. It turns out it was Lin who was showing off her skills. Coming down, Xiagui was glad that they had united ice and fire in battle. As soon as they saw him, they simultaneously expressed their joy. Then they got angry at each other, thinking that someone was clearly copying the other. Xiagui asked Lin about the reason why she decided to participate in the war. She stated that she is a citizen of Daxiao, so it is normal that she fights for her country. In fact, she only came to see him. After which Xia Gui praised her and stroked her head. Yang was dumbfounded, but Lin was very pleased with his action. Interrupting, Yang suggested returning to headquarters. The reason was that the deputy was still waiting for them. At the same time, the deputy announced to his soldiers that the Zelt had left the Kunlun system. The soldiers began to praise the system, rejoicing at the victory over Zelta. The arriving group also observed all this, and shouts of victory were also heard from them. Hyagui turned around and began to leave in some direction. Seeing this, the girls also followed him. As they walked past the crowd, soldiers who were Lin's fans asked for her autograph. They also invited them to celebrate the victory together. Hyagui watched the victory celebration with peace. While Yang was drinking her heart out, Lin was signing autographs for her fans. At some point, a deputy came to Hyagui, noticing that he looked lonely. Hyagui explained that he did not like fuss and noise, and he also suddenly realized that he did not have a specific goal to which he could strive. Hearing this, the deputy suggested talking to Hyagui right here, because he had something to tell him. Suddenly, Lin noticed Hyagui leaving the party with his deputy. His coldness was strange to her. They both came up with something in their heads and decided to follow them. There was a conversation in which Hyagui asked about the reason why the deputy was hiding like that. He explained this by saying that Hyagui helped them a lot in the battle, and therefore he does not want to make public the fact that he is a descendant of the gods. The deputy asked Hyagui about the reward he would like, but at the same time, Hyagui noticed how they were being watched and directed his gaze there. Only Hyagui wanted to say something, but the deputy immediately dragged him to another room to continue the conversation. For the girls, this act seemed suspicious, and they made more and more guesses. They pressed against the door to at least somehow eavesdrop on the conversation. Suddenly, Lin asked why this bothered her so much. After all, Hyagui is already dating Yin. They started blaming each other. While Lin accused Yang of wanting to take away her friend's boyfriend, Yang accused her of keeping an eye on Hyagui while she was married to Gong Song. Suddenly, they heard a conversation that seemed strange to them. The deputy asked whether he needed to undress to continue treatment, to which Hyagui gave his affirmative answer. The deputy stated that he would not reveal Hyagui's identity, to which he, in turn, guessed that the deputy did not consider him a person. Standing with his back to Hyagui, he said that people do not have such abilities, but he understood that they are not each other's enemies. After finishing the treatment, the deputy thanked Hyagui, after which Hyagui asked what was the reason why he did not reveal it, and asked if he needed anything from him. The deputy explained this by saying that he wanted to cooperate. Hyagui realized that the deputy wanted, with the help of his connection with his descendants, to identify spies among people. Agreeing, Hyagui asked about the benefits that awaited him. The deputy told him to ask for whatever he wanted. Hyagui asked not to reveal his identity because he liked his old life. The deputy understood Hyagui well in this regard because he himself knew what it was like. Hyagui continued, he wanted to obtain secret files about the gap between people and descendants that occurred 24 years ago. Amazed that Hyagui was even aware of this, the deputy promised to provide everything after a while. After agreeing, Hyagui finally stated that he wanted to borrow something from him. He opened the door, after which the girls fell in front of him. He asked permission to borrow Yang for a place he wanted to explore. As always, they misunderstood him and were confused by his statement. Hyagui didn't understand and asked them what the problem was. The deputy and Lin had already begun to wonder what they would investigate. Lin began to ask why he wanted to use Yang and not her. She began to ask about the reason and wondered if it was because of the last time. Hyagui immediately interrupted her, explaining that there were underground ruins in the southwest that he wanted to explore. He added that he would need Yang's help to explore the interior of the defense zone. Turning to Yang, he asked her opinion. She agreed without any problems because the war was already over. Opening the portal in front of him, Hyagui began to prepare for departure. As soon as Hyagui said goodbye to the deputy, he was immediately interrupted by Lin, who also wanted to go along. After the group went through the portal, it closed in front of the deputy. The deputy expressed his desire to be a girl in real life as in the game. He didn't want to live in fear of being discovered. They arrived in the area of the Kang Long Star. After arriving, Lin still did not stop clinging to Hyagui, which greatly embarrassed him. She justified herself by saying that she was forced to do this because of his order. Xiagui realized that she was using his last order as an excuse, even though she no longer has the slave mark. Turning towards Yang, she stuck out her tongue in an attempt to show that she would not stop doing this. This angered Yang even more. Suddenly, Yang's angry voice sounded, condemning Xiagui for openly deceiving other women, being at the same time a yin guy. He was unhappy that he was being accused even though he had done nothing. Suddenly realizing his mistake, he pulled out his hand and told Lin to go back. Lin was very embarrassed that he was driving her away, after which Lin, crying, began to call Xiagui a freak and also the father of all births. Xiagui was stunned by her statement and did not understand the reason why she was crying, after which Xiagui began his rant about how she should have grown up after the battle, and also her swordsman's heart should have become more pure. Xiagui continued tying Lin to leave. He told her to concentrate and head back because now she will be able to enter the real Qian Yuan realm. Lin knew that now was the best time to practice, but for some reason she didn't want to leave. She did not understand whether this was a habit or idolization. Stopping the flow of her thoughts, Xiagui finally praised her. Lin asked Xiagui the reason why he felt he had to praise her. Suddenly, come to her senses, Lin quickly decided to leave, stating that by the next meeting, he would have already broken through the Qian Yuan kingdom. As they watched Lin return, Yang asked the reason why he let her go. Xiagui explained that they are similar, but he can only help her with advice so that she can develop herself. Yang was ashamed of her thoughts, and she realized that he treated Lin as a student. Explaining that he had found a goal after some events, he asked Yang to hurry up. She, in turn, clarified whether he was sure that he wanted to explore the ruins because they were dangerous. While they were passing, Xiagui explained that he needed Yang to help him pass, because he doesn't want to cause unnecessary conflict. As soon as they arrived at the gate, Jan introduced herself and ordered the doors to be opened. The military immediately carried out the order, opening the entrance for them, after which Xiagui ordered Yang to stay, thanking her and asking her to just observe. Yang was unhappy with this and headed towards him despite the fact that the soldiers tried to stop her. One of the soldiers wanted to go after them to stop them, but the second one prevented him. After all, it was possible to go there only alone, but Yang went with Xiagui. The second of the soldiers, misunderstanding, accused the first that sometimes you need to pretend as if you didn't see anything. As Xiagui entered, he began to reminisce about the past people he knew. Yang interrupted Xiagui, reporting that something was making her anxious. Xiagui explained that for the same reason he did not want to take her with him. Confused, Yang asked if he knew about this, wanting to know what it is. Xiagui explained that this is an altar for rituals and reproduction. He added that love is the most important element here, and it is useful for a mixed-race child to break through Qian Yuan. Yang was embarrassed that he was talking about it so easily. At this time, Xiagui felt that the ancient descendants were as devoted to God the Father as before. Xiagui found out that Diaotai had disappeared into the sands, just like the altar of the gods in front of him. In his thoughts, an unknown person appeared to him and thanked him for the tender dithyrambs that he sings. He wondered why he prayed for the blessings of others while having his own path. Then Xiagui replied that you need to rely only on yourself. Then, having finished, he opened his eyes. Suddenly, to his surprise, Yang approached him and abruptly hugged him from behind. Yang stated that everything was becoming more difficult for her and asked about what kind of practice this was, to which Xiagui ordered her not to resist anymore. Declaring it to be steam cultivation, she threw him down, saying, "She's good at it." He stated that he had never practiced this. Having started to stick, Yang began asking about the benefits of pear cultivation, announcing him that he deliberately teased her because he wanted to do this to her. Jan stated that love is to comprehend and cultivate, but he resists. She stated that he wants it but is afraid. Having climbed onto it, Yang did not understand in what conclusions she had made a mistake. She claimed that he now looks like a pervert from 100 years ago. Suddenly stopping her, he grabbed her hands. He knocked her down and loomed over her, which Yang clearly didn't expect. Xiagui said that it was not a bad idea to try, but only if she came to her senses, otherwise she will say that she was bullied. When he finished, he bent down to use magic to make it easier. He asked how she was feeling and asked if she still wanted to cultivate together. Yang didn't know how to respond to his words. She talks about her views about him. She explained that she could not understand whether he was a gentleman or just mocking. She asked if he always uses his fingers in the presence of a beauty, to which, holding her close, Xiagui said that thinking about her is a waste of time. After all, she likes his fingers. Yang stated that there is nothing wrong with giving in to feelings. After all, she has been living for 100 years. Pressing close to him, she said she doesn't know who is at a disadvantage because he and she are both beautiful.